Please tell me that's a smoke grenade.
Okay. It's not, though.
Most secret agents don't tell every harlot from here to Hanoi that they are secret agents.
Then why be one?
The following is an in-depth story analysis. If you haven't seen Archer, you may want to before watching this video. Archer is an iconic and, in a way, emblematic addition to the FX network's lineup, which was on the rise in the late 2000s. With the steady success of Always Sunny in Philadelphia, it might seem impossible to imagine that the upstart Archer gradually managed to outpace Sunny's ratings by the time its 5th season aired. But the candle that burns twice as bright burns too fast or something. And as everybody knows, when networks have a hit on their hands, they'll want to keep it around forever. Some creators are happy to march along marking time eternally for the reliable paycheck, while others pride themselves on making a stand and wrapping up the series while it's still in its prime. Creator Adam Reed took a third option. He wanted to continue providing work for his cast, his crew, but he didn't want his breakout series to fall into a routine. If Archer was to remain on the air, he was gonna get weird with it, taking the show in experimental directions not just to continue entertaining the audience, but to continue creatively stimulating himself. And perhaps what Archer is most well known for, more than phrasing, more than Lana! More than that's how you get ants, is that the show goes in a weird direction. I tend to use the phrase weird direction a lot while discussing FX original series, in keeping with the 2008 "There is no box" slogan that defined the network's outside the box programming. Archer's not quite Legion outside the box, but I mean, what is? And Archer certainly takes some big, admirable swings. Grab your bear claws and your liter of melon balls. This is Archer.
Password. Password. How about guest? No way. It can't be.
Archer is a spy comedy that follows the routinely disastrous espionage missions of the ISIS spy agency, set in a deliberately anachronistic time period that allows the series to intertwine classic Cold War-era spy concepts with contemporary pop culture references. The series was created by Adam Reed as a sort of spiritual successor to his short-lived Adult Swim series Frisky Dingo, and would go on to be his biggest breakout success. Reed would serve as sole writer on most episodes for the first 10 of Archer's 14 seasons, though he would collaborate with producers and occasional co-writers on the scripts. The series would also be the breakout role for its star, H. John Benjamin, whose voice acting, supporting, and guest roles had been a mainstay on Adult Swim and Cartoon Network shows for years. Benjamin's voice and delivery suit Adam Reed's comedic style so well, in fact, that he was able to change Reed's mind about giving the character a British accent to further the character's James Bond parallels. And it's a good thing the delivery is so endearing and the dialogue is so sharp, because on paper, Archer is a thoroughly reprehensible person. But the fun of the series is basking in the utter selfishness, clumsiness, and degeneracy of the sex-crazed, hard-drinking main characters. The show definitely walks a fine line pretty deftly, and I can imagine characters could easily devolve into hateability if Archer was voiced by someone else. Like, I don't know, Nick Kroll. Also on a personal note, RE the hard drinking. I've been dialing back on the hard drinking myself lately, which made Archer maybe not the best choice to cover as my latest retrospective. Maybe I should have done a show with less of a focus on drinking. Like, Mad Men.
How can you be drinking after last night?
How can you not?
Because I don't have a problem.
Well, I do.
First step's admitting it, Mother.
What? Not with drinking!
Archer as a series warrants more of a rundown of the characters than a rundown of the premise, since the show is primarily about the characters with all the spy stuff as a framework. And of course, there are multiple seasons that put the notion to the test where the characters are not, in fact, spies. Adam Reed pitched the show as Arrested Development meets James Bond, with Archer's mother, Malory, in particular modeled after Arrested Development's Lucille Bluth, played by Jessica Walter. When the casting call for the part came out, the final words of the casting call were literally, "Think Jessica Walter." And a day later, Jessica Walter's agent reached out and said, "How about the actual Jessica Walter?" Since she's both Archer's no-nonsense boss and uncaring mother, Malory and Archer's dynamic is really the core of the series, especially in the early seasons. And I do think Malory in particular is the MVP of the roster. She's the most unscrupulous character in an already morally dubious cast, with a high and mighty, above-it-all attitude that allows her to play straight man while also being free to switch back and forth into the instigator of the character's disasters, who is comically rich, comically loose, and a comically evil parent, all with the cultural sensitivity of a Rucka Rucka Ali song. All this to say that she's basically every comedy writer's dream character. She's Mr. Burns meets Pierce Hawthorne meets, well, Lucille Bluth. And the only thing that can make her solid gold writing even better is Walter's impeccable delivery.
Len!
Yeah, do you know where he is?
Yes, I'm just screaming his name down the hall to celebrate that fact.
Is that some kind of joke?
Is that?
Speaking of Arrested Development, Jessica Walter wouldn't be the only alum to join Archer's main cast. Judy Greer also appears as Ceryl/Carol/Crystal/Ceryl Tunt, a character who starts off as the office's put-upon meek secretary, but quickly evolves into the show's resident, completely chaotic evil maniac that most off-the-wall sitcoms have. And I mentioned Mr. Burns a moment ago, but Season 2 reveals Cheryl is the heiress to a massive fortune, and she has, actual Mr. Burns money. So she gets to be completely insane with wild non sequiturs and have unlimited wealth. Another goldmine for comedy writing. It's also a welcome chance for Judy Greer to cut loose and get hammy, since Judy Greer has a bit of a reputation for being a really solid actress who is constantly cast in big-scale projects that never give her anything to do. Archer is pretty much just, yeah, you want to get nuts? Let's get nuts.
Maybe I just jam this mop into the engine and kill all of us.
I don't think that's how blimps work, but I am liking the jamming imagery. And the killing.
Alongside Cheryl on the ISIS office side is Pam, who, just like Cheryl, starts off mostly grounded, then develops into a total maniac. Although unlike Cheryl, Pam's development is much more gradual. Starting off as the widely disliked office gossip, by the end of Season 3, Pam has evolved into this over-the-top, master of everything badass sex goddess, who is nevertheless dismissed by her co-workers thanks to Pam presenting as a crass slob. Rounding out the office drones is Cyril Figgis, ISIS's bookish accountant and the show's resident punching bag. He's also Archer's romantic rival in the show's first season, with his meek, nebbish nature aggravating the cocksure Archer even further. On the opposite side of the Judy Greer coin, though, can Hollywood stop relegating Chris Parnell to the pathetic loser roles? Give the man some A material. Give the man another Leo Spaceman.
Are you getting enough vitamin C? May I suggest messily eating an orange while I photograph it?
And who are those two romantic rivals sparring over? That would be Lana Kane, ace field agent and justifiably bitter ex-girlfriend of Sterling Archer. Aisha Tyler does a deft job with the relatively thankless role of playing straight man to all the show's other wackier characters, though Lana isn't without iconic moments of her own. Archer's other straight man, he said, with massive air quotes, is Ray Gillette, although Ray is much more willing to get tangled up in the cast chicanery than Lana. Ray is another standout character because he is the most willing to challenge Malory, who wields her homophobia like fucking Excalibur during their frequent verbal sparring. Ray is also voiced by Adam Reed, who isn't above saving some of the crazier subplots and wittier bon mots for himself.
Since this one went and got himself paralyzed.
Yeah, that's me, Mr. Selfish.
More like Ms.
And last but not least, we have Krieger, the mad scientist of the team who approaches all of his grotesque experiments and disturbing hobbies with an air of genial politeness. There are a handful of recurring characters we can touch on now, like Woodhouse, Archer's endlessly tortured valet, or Len Trexler, head of rival spy agency Odin and former fling of Malory Archer. Trexler is voiced by Jeffrey Tambor, and Trexler's relationship with Malory exists largely as one big Arrested Development nod, since Tambor also portrayed two of Lucille Bluth's lovers in that show. But most notably, the penultimate episode of Season 1 introduces us to Barry, who will go on to effectively become the main villain of the series. In the first two seasons, Barry is sort of a Frank Grimes type, almost a meta character. Here's how much a real person would hate the main character of the show if the main character was a real person. Barry's misfortunes at the hands of ISIS, and Archer specifically, will eventually turn him into an unhinged, murderous cyborg, which leads to incredibly outlandish sci-fi wackiness as he continues to crop up throughout the show, but we'll get to Barry's villainous turn later. Maybe I just have a soft spot for the guy because his voice actor, Dave Willis, also lent his voice to a character who may have allegedly inspired my YouTube visage.
Tonight, you will get your dick ripped off. That doesn't sound right, does it?
Archer is a comedy about a spy agency, but it should not be mistaken for a spy parody. The globe-trotting lifestyle of a spy facilitates a variety of set pieces, but at the end of the day, Archer isn't here to do too much jokey commentary on the spy film genre like Austin Powers.
Wait, aren't you even gonna watch them? They could get away.
No. I'm going to leave them alone and not actually witness them dying. I'm just going to assume it all went to plan. What?
Instead, the spy stuff is a framework for the character interactions, especially in Season 1 before Reed starts going for more structured storylines and adventurous plots. Season 1 plotlines can be a bit boilerplate. A couple heists, a couple assassination attempts, 2 back-to-back honeypots, and a third of the episodes are just about one character pretending there's an enemy spy so they can get what they want, only for a real enemy spy to appear in the third act.
Well, then who did it?
I did!
Captain Lammers?
Nice read, Velma.
Fortunately, the jokes are so solid that the frameworks still work, although the series is still very much finding its footing in its freshman year. Part of that is that the first few debut episodes are kind of the Archer show. And yeah, I know, it's literally a show called Archer, about a main character named Archer, so that issue might seem stupid, but in reality, this series is an ensemble cast piece that thrives when the cast are all bouncing off each other. And early in the first season, Archer, Malory, and Ceryl are the only characters that come out of the box fully formed. Lana and Cheryl take about half the season to find their niche. Pam only starts to tiptoe into her real role by the finale, and Ray and Krieger don't even appear until halfway through the season. Or, well, technically, Krieger appears earlier and was initially envisioned as a non-speaking character, but Frisky Dingo alum Frisky Dingo alum Lucky Yates sort of fell into the role at the suggestion of Pam's voice actress, Amber Nash. He's a great fit. My brother met him one time. Heard he's a nice guy.
I thought nobody else was supposed to know about this.
He won't remember.
Yeah, no, I am shit-faced.
Later seasons of Archer would increasingly experiment with overarching season storylines and major character relationship arcs, but that's not to say those elements are entirely absent from season 1. There are two main storylines running in the background in season 1, both involving characters having secret sexual partners. Malory has a long-term secret relationship with head of the KGB, Nikolai Jakov, which she wants to hide from Archer since she fears Nikolai may unknowingly be Archer's father. And Lana's boyfriend, Ceryl, who becomes fearful that Lana is still infatuated with Archer and begins banging every woman in the immediate vicinity on paranoid impulse.
Maybe how I just caught my boyfriend balls deep in some French chick!
Ex-boyfriend, I bet.
You think?
Yeah, he's not coming back. That chick was like the Pele of anal.
The season culminates with the people those characters were trying to hide their secret from discovering the truth and retaliating. Lana feigns that she's banging every single person in the office on principle to mess with Ceryl, which is punctuated with some pretty weak sauce gender critique shit, if I'm being perfectly honest. But at least Archer brings it home by getting implanted with a malfunctioning KGB mind control chip as part of a crazy jack-off paternity test ploy that winds up brainwashing him into killing his mother.
Grilled cheese.
What?
Grill me a cheese.
I'm not grilling you a cheese.
With the two main overarching storylines being affairs, I do feel I need to address that, Archer is a raunchy sex comedy that wears its raunchy sex comedy nature on its sleeve. But season 1 leans into raunchy sex comedy the hardest and might put off people who would enjoy the more clever gags and character bits and homages the later years have in store. This is one of those shows where every main cast member sleeps with pretty much every other main cast member, even if most trysts are just played for laughs, and even if some are spur-of-the-moment threesomes, and even if in one episode it's just two characters raping an unconscious Ceryl. But yeah, Pam and Ceryl are dirty stomp-arounds, ditto for Malory, who also has a thing for black guys. Archer has a thing for twins and getting covered in various fluids. Lana is a bit of a dom and also into watching interracial porn with her partners, but that's only in the first few episodes. Reed lays it on real thick from the word go and then almost immediately drops it. And Krieger, well, he just really enjoys his work. The most consistent throughout the series is Cheryl, who in true wildcard maniac fashion is aroused by being abused.
I'm just gonna say it. I think it's super creepy you get sexually aroused by physical violence.
Well, but also emotional violence.
Wow. Yeah. That's even creepier.
So that's season 1 of Archer. The acerbic dialogue is impeccable right out of the gate, even if the supporting cast take a bit of time to find their footing. Anyways, on to season 2.
I think we're pretty diverse.
Please.
What? You're black-ish?
Ish?
Well, what's the word for it, Lana? You freaked out when I said quadroon.
I mentioned the show started to come into its own as it developed over season 1, and with the sophomore year, we're really coming into our own. Season 2 reveals Cheryl's exorbitant wealth, it flirts with Pam's badass capabilities, but beyond that, the focus episode plotlines explore our cast as developed, fleshed-out people. Pam and Cheryl both get a spotlight in the kidnapping episode, Cyril gets a chance to prove himself, that he promptly fails, in Tragical History, and best of all, Archer's valet Woodhouse gets a season highlight flashback episode where it's revealed he's a war vet tied up into Tontine. God, I just realized I'm getting old. I love Tontine focus episodes for the older supporting characters in animated television. We're gonna need a third world war so our children can have more of them. I mean, those episodes are kind of worth it. Think of the children. Season 2 also doubles down on series continuity. Two marvelous results. Archer's bastard child, that's actually Cyril's bastard child misidentified through a phony blood test, or Len Trexler of Odin's Return, where the ISIS crew brainwashed the guy with sloppy seconds of Archer's Soviet subterfuge chip to prevent him from buying ISIS.
Can I have the bunny and the lettuce?
Can we give Lenny the rabbit?
And the lettuce.
Sure thing. Go to town.
Yeah, 'cause, they're brothers.
Is he always going to be like this now? Because I feel bad.
On a side note, I do think it was an interesting tactical choice to make A Going Concern the second episode of the season and Swiss Miss the first episode of the season. They're both solid entries, but A Going Concern is structured far more like a season premiere, even directly following up on the events of the first season's finale. But that stuff is all more rewarding for returning audiences, not newcomers. Meanwhile, Swiss Miss plays better with newcomers. Or should I say, newcomers. I mean, let's be real. Sex sells, and the topless snowmobile chase at the climax of the episode was fodder for every single promo and trailer building up to season 2, even if nobody watching those trailers had any clue yet that they were all perverts.
I am from Germany, where the age of consent is 14.
What is it, the Alabama of Europe?
In many ways, yes.
The most talked about episodes, though, involve Archer being diagnosed with breast cancer for a standout two-parter. One part that eschews the show's typical spy structure and is instead entirely about Archer struggling with his diagnosis, and a second, more traditional part facing off against some card-carrying bad guys while going through treatment. Beyond just being very, very funny, the two-parter was oddly touching at points, and a sort of proof of concept that Archer as a series could integrate some genuine emotional heart. The show was making moves to become more than some goofy sex comedy, even if a positive cancer diagnosis was also like the ultimate shelling point for a relentlessly irreverent comedy like Archer.
Wait, seriously don't open it?
Yes!
Oh, I thought you were being sarcastic.
Delving into the characters and focusing on them does mean that the occasional episodes that mimic the boilerplate espionage mission structure from season 1 can fall a bit by the wayside. There are a few episodes that are just the ISIS gang goes to an exotic location, and Archer relentlessly screws everything up. And those ones have always fallen pretty flat for me. I'm referring specifically to Pipeline Fever, an episode which has a bizarrely vicious interpretation of dry ice, and Ju Mongasque. Not even gonna look up if I did that right, where Archer gambles away a shit ton of ransom money and has endless hilarity, again, hilarity, air quotes, mocking the name of his bellman, Benoit.
Sounds like Benoit balls, Benoit. Balls. See? I can't even say it without saying balls. Say your name. Benoit. Balls.
Hilarious, right? I mean, the show just cannot get enough of that gag. Both episodes feel like weaker follow-ups to Season 1's exceptional Skytanic. Archer, in a fantastic location, relentlessly blowing a mission. But it wasn't the structure of Skytanic that made Skytanic a winner, it was the hilarity and rapid pace of its dialogue.
Beardsley McTurbanhead.
You idiot. That's Sandhu Singh, the billionaire investor. He's a Sikh.
If anything went wrong on this flight, he'd lose millions.
It's a perfect cover.
Sterling!
I'll admit, I know I'm the outlier here. Audiences seem to generally like Ju Mongasque perfectly fine, and Pipeline Fever is sometimes regarded as one of the best episodes in the entire series. Hopefully I didn't lose too many of you by briefly ragging on those two. Archer's potential father figure Nikolai Jakov comes into play once again as Season 2 draws to a close, as Archer attempts to sneak into Russia for a paternity test, only to get captured and learn that if Jakov is not the father, he'll have no problem executing his not son. The first half of the two-parter turns into Archer and Barry in an extended foot chase through the streets of Moscow, which is wall-to-wall kinetic action while also being wall-to-wall hilarious.
What, you hear machine guns and decide now's a good time to take out the... Oh, that's groceries. I'm sorry, I thought it was garbage.
At the end of the day, Archer is saved by Katya Casanova, a KGB agent infatuated with Archer who wants to marry Archer and defect. Suspecting she's playing him, Malory and the rest of the ISIS gang eventually wind up in a shootout with her. Noting their suspicions about her manipulating Archer are grounded in the fact that the eminently self-centered Archer has actually started to make positive changes to his life and relationships as a result of their love. It's actually, somewhat surprisingly, a tease of things to come. Later seasons will begin to explore Archer becoming a somewhat more emotionally intelligent person as a result of his relationships, which is something you expect from the main character in shows like Community, but not so much Archer, which for years presented itself as a no-hugging, no-learning show.
Woodhouse, I quit drinking for her. Just that one. I'm scared if I stop all at once, the cumulative hangover will literally kill me.
I say no hugging, no learning, but after being abandoned in Russia, Barry is rebuilt by the Soviets as a cyborg and is learning new ways to hate. Taking his new bionic body for a spin, Barry races to New York to kill Archer, but settles for simply killing his bride.
Yeah! 1 for 3 off the roof, bitch!
So the season 2 finale marks Barry going from Archer's smarmy rival to the show's resident psychotic cyborg supervillain. Adam Reed mentioned in an interview with the AV Club discussing the 3rd season that he felt the show was missing a proper nemesis, and elected to retrofit Barry into that position. Though in practice, Barry's role as the show's primary antagonist varies from season to season. Sometimes he's a one-off drop-in guest for an especially high-stakes episode, a la Sideshow Bob. Sometimes he's the card Reed keeps up his sleeve for the big surprise finale showdowns. Other times, like season 4, it's more of a Saturday morning cartoon villain thing, where he just gets cameos at the end of some episodes like, ooh, he's the mastermind who hired this week's bad guy. And in the first Coma Dream season, he's a full-on villain who appears in every episode and ties the overarching plot together. The show definitely goes iteratively crazier and crazier with both the sci-fi angle and like the literal craziness of him as the show goes along, which got a bit of a divisive reception from the fans, but as of this point in the series, I think he's in a good spot. Creative-wise, mind you. He's not in a great spot mentally. And neither is Archer, for that matter, who we'll meet back up with as he mourns the death of Katya in his own special way when we get to season 3.
Duh, I bet he already totally killed himself.
No, he didn't. What's wrong with you?
Nothing, cause my skeevy Russian fiancé wasn't murdered in front of my very eyeballs at my stupid wedding!
Season 2 of Archer honed in on the characters' unique voices, delved into some more adventurous plotlines and themes, and in the process drew in an even larger audience and made a name for itself on the network. And Season 3 is all about riding the high and celebrating that critical and commercial success with celebrity guest stars. Archer had a handful of celebrity guests in the past, but Season 3's roster is on an entirely new level. Burt Reynolds as himself, Jack McBrayer, Michael Rooker, George Takei, Bryan Cranston, the main trio from Trailer Park Boys, Patrick Warburton, and David Cross. And while the show would continue to draw in the occasional big name, as well as frequent flyers from the 2010s comedy scene, Season 3 is far and away the most star-studded. That star power is part of why Season 3 feels like such a big, spectacular event season. But another reason Season 3 feels like such an event is because it is literally half event episodes. The series opens on a 3-parter episode and is capped off with 2 2-parters back-to-back. Part of this is a consequence of the season being trimmed down from what was intended. FX commissioned a special 3-part episode to air during Archer's off-season, in the time slot immediately following It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. It's part of a cross-promotional effort to get the Sunny fans to check out Archer and the Archer fans to check out Sunny. And since the Archer fans got paired up with the Pretty Woman, Jersey Shore, and Child Pageant episodes, and the Sunny fans got paired up with, well, Heart of Archness, yeah, I'd imagine both shows left some pretty fucking good impressions.
Patty's Pub? What the hell is Archer doing in Philadelphia?
The Heart of Archness quote-unquote special assignment did lead to some crossed wires behind the scenes, with Adam Reed interpreting the 3-parter as 3 of the 13 episodes the series had been renewed for. However, FX had intended for the special assignment to be its own thing, and expected a further 13 episodes on top of it. Reed discovered the network was expecting 16 episodes total through the grapevine while abroad, and despite valiant efforts to keep up with that revised crunch schedule, was ultimately unable to accomplish it. So 13 episodes total is all audiences got. But what a killer 13. Season 3 is such a tremendous hot streak, starting off strong with Heart of Archness, with Patrick Warburton and David Cross's guest voices so naturally pairing off as straight men to Benjamin's equally uniquely voiced Archer. These episodes have always held a special place in my heart because I missed them airing live, and I remember it took forever for them to drop on American Netflix. So when Heart of Archness was finally made available, it was like this little bonus Archer treat, an hour of pure Archer gold delivered on the tail of a comet. I guess I could have just pirated it all those years ago. But tragically, I didn't get the idea to do piracy until after watching it.
Eileen, no, don't say it.
He's been here voluntarily, partying his ass off as king of the pirates.
What?
The special also concludes with a new shakeup to the Archer formula, Ray's paralysis. In contrast to Archer's brief bout of cancer the preceding season, Ray's paralysis is mostly used as an avenue for extremely vicious jokes where other characters deride him as an inconvenience, which I am 100% not above at all. They're fucking hilarious. And there's a bit of ebb and flow to the paralysis. It's revealed late in the season that he's been faking paralysis to get back at everyone. Then at the very end of the season, Archer really paralyzes him. Add all that up with a joyous Ray focus episode where he returns to his redneck hometown for a shootout with 2 of the all-time great redneck character actors, and Season 3 does a tremendous job of fleshing out Ray, a character who was already becoming a fan favorite, even out of the spotlight.
The rest of us got new key codes Monday, but you were... where was it?
Physical therapy.
For your limp, useless legs.
Well, it's obviously working. You're on a... Wait a minute.
Season 3 in general does a good job of developing characters. Toward the end of the season, we learn that Pam Poovey doesn't just put out, she puts out with gusto. Pam and Archer start hooking up on the down low, with Archer both completely enthralled by her sexual prowess while also being mortified at the prospect of anyone learning about their fling. Again, touching on the concept that Pam is awesome, just such a crass slob that no one wants to admit it. All while giving Pam the confidence in herself to take such slights in stride.
You will wake up in 3 separate 50-gallon drums.
That's 150 gallons of Pam's hot, dirty, ball-slapping...
Oh, God!
When it came to characters, Season 3 also makes an effort to hone in on what doesn't work. Specifically, it's pretty apparent that Reed has realized the running gag of Malory sleeping with, or wanting to sleep with, or having already slept with every silver fox that appeared in the show has run its course. The concept does go out in a bang, though. No pun intended. Well, when in Rome. Phrasing, boom. Right after Heart of Archness, Malory gets together with the in and out of universe mimetic badass Burt Reynolds, before finally getting a long-term relationship that mostly lasts the remainder of the series at the start of Season 4. And she does get one final climactic tryst in Lo Scandolo, a bottle episode revolving around an elaborate ploy by Malory to murder the Prime Minister of Italy and trick the ISIS staff into helping her dispose of the body. In my personal opinion, Lo Scandolo is the best episode of Archer, and it's honestly not even close. The entire cast in one apartment, each one playing to their strengths, all bouncing off each other in this cloak and dagger plotline, all with a big twist reveal at the end. And the Irish landlord bit. Good God, the Irish landlord bit.
Every single time we come over here, we have to help you get rid of a dead body.
Well, you've only been here twice.
With all the characters really coming into their own in year 3, I do feel there is an odd man out, and that's Cyril. Not that there's any material with him that is bad, per se. It's more just odd that the show takes the opportunity provided by Ray's paralysis to promote Cyril to field agent and then just doesn't do anything with it. Even his own Focus episode where he first gets promoted is actually more about Archer and Lana, and he's just sort of floating around in the background all season, not really doing anything. He'll occasionally chime in to note that he doesn't understand what's happening, but it isn't until he blows that guy's head off on accident in episode 10 where I went, oh, right, Cyril's in this. But again, I think Season 3 is excellent, and I can't really fault a show for underutilizing a character who works perfectly fine, in contrast to, say, overutilizing a character that doesn't.
I'm promoting Cyril to field agent.
What?
Hey, that sounds great. Best of luck.
Where do you think you're going?
Oh, sorry, I gotta get back to Earth before the Stargate closes.
Get back in here!
Mother, the chevrons are locking.
Season 3 of Archer would mark the show's first dalliances into outright meta episodes. First with the aforementioned Burt Reynolds cameo, which is basically just one big, remember all the Gator references in Pipeline Fever? That episode that everyone except some idiot calling himself Slipmaker loves, while we got popular enough to get the real Gator McCluskey. Though the most brazen, and most widely misunderstood, is the Dodge Challenger episode, a fake product integration episode promoting a company that wasn't actually paying to promote themselves on Archer. A joke Adam Reed had previously pulled with Frisky Dingo's Scion bit, which explains why Archer is allowed to spend most of the episode complaining about the features of the car, after ostensibly shilling it for the first 5 minutes. Ashamed to admit, the joke that they weren't actually sponsored by Dodge definitely went over my head back in the day. Young me was like, oh, so annoying when shows sell out. And looking around the internet, I definitely wasn't alone. And Adam Reed himself even lamented in that AV Club interview that Malory's joke intended to tell the audience this wasn't a real paid sponsorship wound up being too subtle and nobody picked up on it.
Welcome, Mr. Archer.
It does know my name!
To the Dodge Challenger Special Agent Edition, brought to you by Dodge.
Thanks, Dodge!
Wow. So, how much did Dodge kick in? Not as much as you'd think.
Anyways, rounding out our hot streak with a hot streak of finales. First off, a two-parter where psycho cyborg Barry Dillon comes to town to kill flipped Russian assets that Archer cares for. In part 1, assassinating a defecting jackoff, therefore denying Archer a paternity test and closure. This episode is immaculate. Well, with our first introduction to a truly bonkers-level insane Barry, as well as introducing Archer's hookup relationship with Pam. Though on a rewatch, the ending is kind of perplexing. The episode sets up that Barry has some sort of grander master plan, and Jackoff's final message that the audience doesn't get to see also alludes to some sort of larger conspiracy, none of which come up again. And I'm not just talking about Barry's master plan, I'm also talking about Archer's parentage as well. Adam Reed admitted in an interview with Cracked that he can be a bit scatterbrained when it comes to setups and payoffs, and eventually sort of just lost interest in the whole Archer's father plot. So, not that you know it, but this is more or less the end of the Who Was Archer's Dad saga. Or forget not that you know it, the episode deliberately sets up that it's not the end. It's only the beginning, so if you're watching with no spoilers, you would expect the exact opposite. There would be a handful of references to Archer not knowing his father in later years, but the paternity question is all but done and dusted as far as the show is concerned. And if you want the creator's insight on who Papa probably was, oh, let's say Buddy Rich.
I mean, between Archer ruining my life and you dicks turning me into a cyborg, I'm kind of amazed I'm even this sane. Which is obviously a relative term, but...
what are you doing?
Rationalizing my behavior?
With guests.
Oh.
Continuing Barry's New York murder spree is Skin Game, where Krieger manages to resurrect Katja as a cyborg. Coming off of Katja's last appearance, which was a high-stakes thrill ride where the entire ISIS staff opened fire on Archer, and coming off of the previous episode, where a supporting character was murdered in a death scene that was played incongruously seriously, Katja's robotic return is some pretty breezy fare. Though Barry does appear at the 11th hour to put some color back in the show's cheeks. And, I'm sorry, not to turn this into the Barry show, but the revelation of how and when Barry knew to find them is probably my favorite line delivery in the entire series.
Is anybody gonna ask how and why I knew to show up here?
Okay, I'll bite.
By tracking the satellite signal from Katja's internal hard drive, which Dr. Dipshit over there bought from the KGB.
What? Krieger? Yeah, but the savings.
Like $80 you saved.
The episode does sort of just grind to a halt after the sudden spark of excitement, with Barry and Katja fighting but then having sex and basically going, we're both cyborgs, so we're drawn to each other, roll credits. But that pseudo two-parter finale is followed up by an even better actual two-parter finale, Space Race. Although, I don't really have a ton of commentary on this one, actually. It's a hilarious space journey premise with Bryan Cranston as guest star villain, appearing only a couple months before Breaking Bad returned for its final season, so the casting was, how you say, a good get. There's the implicit Moonraker homage, some Alien homages, and some Star Wars homages, because, hey, we're in space. Barry shows up in the 11th hour yet again, but Archer denies him their final confrontation and instead traps him in space. They're two really great episodes that compose a two-parter. That's all I have to say. I'm doing a retrospective critique where I critique and examine things. If I wanted to cover comedies that were perfect front to back, I'd do a video on Review with Forrest McNeil. But I don't want to do that, because complaining about stuff is easier than praising it.
You're gonna fly us back to Earth to stand trial for whatever, space piracy.
No man can judge me.
Well, you say that.
Mars forever!
Season 4 of Archer, in my mind, has a not insignificant number of parallels to the 8th season of The Simpsons. First and foremost, in the hearts of purist fans, they're both regarded as the closing days of the show's ostensible golden age. Both seasons are peppered with notable celebrity voice actors appearing in very meta roles. Rodney Dangerfield, John Waters, David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson in character as Mulder and Scully, and David Hyde Pierce riffing on his relationship with Kelsey Grammer from Frasier and Simpsons. In Archer's Corner, there are multiple episodes that incorporate the Bob's Burger cast, with the premiere opening on this hilariously bizarre pseudo crossover where an amnesiac Archer has stumbled into a new life identical to his role in Bob's Burger. Wait, I can never remember. Is it plural? Bob's Burgers. Yeah, burgers sounds right.
Burger Bob, burger.
До свидания, Archer.
And perhaps most notably, the late Anthony Bourdain appears as the abrasive host of a reality cooking show, in an episode that is occasionally shot like a reality cooking show. For years I hadn't rewatched the episode, but I always remembered the celebrity chef being Alton Brown. And I was like, yeah, that Alton Brown episode, that was a good one. Then I saw someone talking about how good the Bourdain episode was, and I was like, wait, what? Am I in a different reality? Is this the Mandingo effect? Then I realized I was thinking of Alton Brown and Archer because Alton Brown did a collab with Archer for a special on the Season 3 DVD. That explains it.
No, of course not. Alcohol doesn't...
Oh, wait. Why don't we get a giant science molecule to waddle out here? Then you guys could do a cute little bit together.
Both shows also seemed somewhat self-conscious that they were in danger of growing stale and decided to go wild with more imaginative and experimental episode concepts. The Archer believing he's Bob Belcher episode, the cooking show episode, the Archer and his new father-in-law's road trip bonding episode, the Krieger giving Ray bionic legs bottle episode that really only has a conflict because Archer has grown to resent cyborgs and wants to stop the operation out of robophobic paranoia. Both shows also do an episode where the main character accidentally goes on a hallucinogenic vision quest, although Archer doesn't go nearly as hard in the paint visually compared to The Simpsons.
I better check my pupils.
And I may have buried the lead there, but yes, Archer has a new father-in-law, Ron Cadillac. proud owner of a chain of Cadillac dealerships. Ron shares Malory's casual, unintentional racism, but is much more level-headed and affable, which makes for a fun dynamic where sometimes he can cool Malory off, but other times she can wind him up. It's hardly a surprise the couple has such great chemistry. Ron Cadillac is voiced by Jessica Walter's real-life husband, Ron Liebman. He's a fun addition to the cast. Or, well, I say addition, but he doesn't stick around too long. He appears in almost half of the episodes in year 4, before being reduced to a 2-parter in season 5, and then is reduced to cameos in season 6 and 7. With season 8, Archer enters the coma dream seasons, and Ron Cadillac's character was never reimagined to integrate into said coma dreams. And by the time Archer wakes from his coma, Liebman had passed away. However, he does get one final posthumous appearance in season 12, after Jessica Walter passed away as well, with the couple riding off into the sunset together for a happily ever after in a sweet tribute to the pair. Speaking of new character introductions, season 4 also introduces audiences to Rodney, the fastidious, bureaucratic weapons master who was hired by Malory to prevent, you know, like everything that happened in Bloody Furlan. He's a major component of the second and third episodes of the season, so it seems like he's being set up as a new supporting character, but then he just kind of never appears again. Granted, both episodes were about Archer going rogue and attempting to work against ISIS for his own ends, which allows Rodney to kind of naturally slot into the bit, so yeah, I don't know. It's weird. He does such a great job rage baiting the rest of the cast, then vanishes. And one day you're sitting there watching Archer season, 37, and it dawns on you and you go, wait, whatever happened to that Rodney guy? Hell, even the characters do it years later.
When we got shut down, that guy...
Kevin, Kyle, Keith, Kenny, was it Kieran?
Rodney?
Rodney! Why was I thinking Kevin? Oh!
Archer Season 4 winds down with another 2-parter finale, this time taking us under the sea instead of among the stars, and doubling down on the referential humor in an effort to, well, maybe not top Space Race, but at least try to compete with it. So you have Eugene Merman and Christian Shaw, 2 of H. John Benjamin's co-stars in Bob's Burgers, as well as John Hamm as Captain Murphy, a nod to Adam Reed's previous series, Sea-Lab 2021.
One of two things is going to happen now.
Okay.
Okay, now one thing is going to...
The other big element intended to give the season finale a sense of import is the reveal that Lana is pregnant, which had been hinted at on occasion in a few episodes leading up to the finale, a development which made myself and many viewers at the time a little apprehensive about the future. More often than not, pregnancy plotlines and baby plotlines are like the kiss of death for sitcoms that are running out of ideas. But beyond Lana's pregnancy, Adam Reed had an even grander idea to reinvigorate Archer going into season 5.
What are we gonna do with literally, not figuratively, a ton of cocaine?
Before getting into the major shakeup of season 5, I'll briefly touch on one minor shakeup. Specifically, the casting. George Coe, who voiced Woodhouse throughout the first 4 seasons, was unable to reprise the role in season 5 due to health problems, and is voiced by Tom Kane instead. George Coe would pass away a short time later, and the character of Woodhouse was retired from the series following his death. Season 5 of Archer marks the first of Archer's many experimental concept seasons, restructuring the series to riff on a genre other than spy thrillers, typically with a more serialized season structure than what came before. The first experiment with this idea came in season 5, aka Archer Vice, which opens on the ISIS offices being raided and shut down since they've actually been acting extrajudicially this entire time.
I just freaking got here, Ray! How the hell should I... No.
No.
Archer Vice's premiere repilot is nothing short of exhilarating, tantalizingly throwing the show's format out the window, while also dramatically raising the stakes after a fairly lighthearted, low-stakes preceding season. And the conclusion of the episode that sets up the rest of the season is an incredibly enticing hook. Now all out of work, the cast form a cartel to get back in the black by selling off a literal ton of cocaine squirreled away in ISIS's hidden vault.
So what, we form a cartel?
Well, how hard could it be? I mean...
Don't.
If Mexicans can do it.
My only real problem with the premiere is that it kind of sets expectations too high. I mean, it straight up ends on a high-octane musical montage that's essentially a trailer for the season to come. But then the first half of Archer Vice kind of disappointingly stays put in the show's comfort zone, despite the supposed massive shakeup to the formula. Almost like Reed and Co. were worried that if they strayed too far from the status quo, audiences would jump ship. although it's not like I can totally blame them for that trepidation since Archer Dreamland a few years later would more or less prove that worry to be justified. But I mean, yeah, Archer Vice, it's a whole new world, an opportunity for all kinds of new adventures. But let's start off with 2 episodes that bring back old villains so we can do sequel episodes. And also start off with 2 of the first 3 episodes not exploring that whole new world, and instead being bottle episodes set entirely in Cheryl's mansion. There's another episode centered around a celebrity the show has repeatedly referenced, guest starring as an ultra badass version of themselves, this time Kenny Loggins, and there's another episode that pays homage to Burt Reynolds' filmography while repeatedly winking to camera. Look at us, we're doing a Burt Reynolds thing. So for all the hype that hype building premiere builds, it isn't really until halfway through the season that Archer Vice becomes Archer Vice in more than name only. And even then, I mean, it's a fun enough episode, but the finale is one of those, the baby is coming early so we have to deliver it in an unusual location plots, which is like stock sitcom 101. The series does start to live up to its premise significantly more when the season's serialization kicks in, where Archer, Ray, and Ceryl lose a bunch of coke in Colombia and have to escape the country, but then through a comedy of errors wind up stealing a bunch of weapons, and since all of the team's cocaine has been either stolen, blown up, or consumed by Pam, they decide to change career paths again and go into the gun-running business, which gets them tied up in a foreign revolution. And the big reveal at the conclusion of Archer Vice is that the arms deal was all part of a CIA plot, one that both Malory and Archer were in on. Send guns to San Marcos in exchange for cocaine, then use the ISIS gang to liquidate the cocaine into cash by selling it to the American public, which does seem a bit far-fetched. Like, getting involved in regime changes in Latin America and distributing drugs to the American people? I don't think the CIA would ever do something like that.
He didn't have money to buy weapons. He only had cocaine, but Iran was like, no way, cash only, so...
Iran? Oh, sorry, Iraq. Wait, no, Iran. No, doesn't matter who. Anyway, to buy the weapons, we needed to monetize the cocaine.
Archer Vice is one of those structural changes that I imagine a lot of media outlets would report as being controversial, but which is actually, on premise, not all that controversial among the fanbase. As I mentioned earlier, the core of the show is the characters themselves. The most divisive change introduced with the Archer Vice storyline is Cocaine Pam. Inadvertently consuming a large quantity of cocaine early in the season, Pam quickly falls into addiction. Some love the hyperactive adult nature of the character this season, while others can't stand it. Sad to say, I fall into the latter, hate it camp. Probably unsurprisingly, given I harped on episodes that repeat a single joke over and over earlier, and Cocaine Pam is nothing if not a single joke. However, I did have to do some soul-searching on why I dislike Cocaine Pam, given my history with drug addict characters and other comedy shows I've covered. Recently I covered the series Peep Show, and praised the widely beloved crack-addled maniac character Super Hans. Hell, earlier in this video, I had nothing but good things to say about Review with Forrest McNeil, a show that on-again, off-again involves the main character indulging in inordinate amounts of cocaine.
In the words of Grandmaster Flash, you going high on that cocaine, you going crazy like a cocaine train.
So I had to ask myself, why do those two work for me while Cocaine Pam leaves me cold? Well, I think the answer's obvious. I hate women. No, seriously though, I think it comes down to execution and what comedic angle the writers are going for in each case. The humor of Forrest McNeil's addiction comes from the horror show of watching him destroy his own life as a result of an impulse he allows to control him. His cocaine addiction is a microcosm of sort of like what the entire show is about. And the drug humor with Super Hans plays into the broader characterization. He'll get incredibly impassioned about completely trivial issues, only to treat things like crime, having children, or doing hard drugs with a paradoxically blasé attitude.
What you got in there?
It's a bit of crack.
Crack? Crack, Super Hans?
Relax. It's not Blue Peter. It's a nice little relaxing smoke of crack.
Meanwhile, the humor with Cocaine Pam stems from the absurdity of just how much cocaine Pam is using. I'm talking like Bob McKenzie drinking an entire brewery tank of beer levels of cartoonish overconsumption. Although Bob McKenzie's heroic act saved the day, while Pam eating piles of cocaine the size of a man only causes further trouble for the rest of the cast. And yes, eating. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Pam only consumes cocaine by eating it or soaking it through the skin. And correct me if I'm wrong again, but I assume this is a mandate from the FX network. FX is in this weird position where they produce TV MA shows, but have additional restrictions they have to tiptoe around due to advertisers, which was a factor in the creation of a sister channel with fewer restrictions, FXX. Unsurprisingly, both Archer and Always Sunny would eventually move to FXX in later years, propping up that channel's lineup in exchange for greater creative freedom. Circling back to the the topic at hand, ultimately I feel Cocaine Pam boils down to this. I'm not above lowbrow jokes, but it's a one-note lowbrow joke stretched over half a season of television. And the most insulting part of all is that the writing seems overly pleased with itself. Here's Cocaine Pam, the bit of the century, enjoy. Archer has certainly had a number of moments where the writers deserve to be incredibly pleased with themselves, but Cocaine Pam becoming a statuesque stunner after eating a bunch of cocaine yogurt is not one of them.
Stop it. Yum, yum, Pam. Yum, yum, yum. Yum, yum, yum. Gimme, yum, yum. Gimme.
God damn it, will you calm the shit down?
Wow.
I hate this character.
Pam isn't the only one going on a character-shifting journey after the shutdown of ISIS. Ceryl Tunt has rebranded herself as Shirlene, with designs to become a country music star. Archer Vice actually incorporates several original songs as Shirlene takes the stage, with Jessie Lynn Martins providing Shirlene's singing voice. It's a self-indulgent departure for the series, to be sure, and I'm more of an indie folk and indie rock Chuck Bartowski-esque loser when it comes to musical taste who doesn't always cotton to country. But as a high school theater kid, that little theater kid inside me couldn't help but enjoy watching a series go self-indulgent with some original numbers.
Good night, Travis County. There will be no encore. Woo!
The problem with the Shirlene arc, unfortunately, is that it relegates a few characters to the had to give them something to do category, which is never a good place to be as a writer. Malory, long retired from field work, isn't up to the task to join the gang on their inevitably doomed cocaine deal missions, instead electing to become Shirlene's manager. And early in the season, Ray's bionic legs are on the fritz, and he has to play music tutor instead of tagging along on missions. Malory is especially egregious. I made a point that her interactions with the cast in the early seasons were essentially the lifeblood of the series, and in Archer Vice, she's relegated to Act 1 quest giver or just stereotypical greedy manager, with fewer and fewer of the juicy character interactions, which is why the episode where she grills the team on their failures up to that point as a framing device is such a shot of adrenaline in Archer Vice's third act.
And a small bowl, a mirror, a needle and thread, and a straight razor.
Oh, calm down. You're not emasculating Krieger.
What the hell was the mirror for?
So you could watch.
Perhaps unsurprisingly, Cyril is once again the odd man out. At the start of Archer Vice, there's this big scene where Cyril reveals he used to be an attorney, and Malory implies he's going to be like the Saul Goodman of this crime syndicate. Then it never ever comes up again. And at the end, this whole coke spy guns conspiracy was all a CIA ploy, so the gang is off the hook and everything goes back to normal. Hey, if it's any consolation, Chris Parnell, we all know voice acting is money for old rope, and you landed 2 main cast roles in animated shows that go on forever. So that's Archer Vice. The season put its best foot forward, only to nervously jump back to familiarity right away, and then sort of gradually tiptoe into the exciting premise it initially promised. The following season was at one point pitched as an entire season of the cast behind bars for their actions in Archer Vice. The creative team had a massive brainstorming session where they were giddily excited about all kinds of prison plot lines they could do with the Archer cast, only for someone to mention people will think we're copying Orange is the New Black, which immediately turned everyone off the idea. So we've got a return to normalcy for season 6, instead of, say, I had something for this. Arch is the new... Our chicken run, no, it's gone.
You want to drink, you want to lecture us, you want more bear claws, you want to smoke, you want to masturbate, and you're scared that we'll figure out you're actually just a Krieger clone.
What? That's all just common sense.
One of the most astoundingly creative elements of the 6th season of Archer was the Archer scavenger hunt. Beginning with a hexadecimal code hidden in the 2nd episode of the season, the Archer scavenger hunt turned out to be a sprawling online adventure interlinking unlisted YouTube videos, in-character social media accounts, clues within the ongoing season, and an in-browser Cheryl game titled You're Not My Supervisor. While some clues were more straightforward, like combining the first and last letters of each line in an email, or beating the secret Barry Dillon boss fight in You're Not My Supervisor, others were ludicrously complex. Hidden dots that appear to be Morse code, but which actually need to be stretched vertically into a barcode. Sounds that display the missing puzzle piece of an in-episode QR code if you look at the spectrogram of the audio file, and the pool balls in an episode from the preceding season that reveal a code if you use a number-to-letter cipher. It was nuts. A wildly complex journey that relied on the shared sleuthing of the entire Archer online community, and the project was impressive enough to even earn an Emmy Award for Outstanding Creative Achievement in Interactive Media. Even if, hilariously, all the winners got was an absurdly large image file of a muffin and a quick shout-out from Krieger.
Wow, some of you were actually paying attention. Way to go, Krieger Army.
While that may have been innovative, Archer Season 6 is more about a return to normalcy following Archer Vice, with the characters back in the spy biz and serving as hired hands for the CIA, as opposed to working as their own agency, ISIS. In fact, Season 6 marked the end of the organization being known as ISIS entirely, with Adam Reed removing the name in an effort to distance the series from the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, aka ISIS, who were making headlines for their continued atrocities and terror attacks.
9/11 Airlines. What a terrible name for an airline. It reminds me of that tragedy.
Working for the CIA means meet the new boss, Slater. Meet the new boss, same as the old Barry, or at least a similar dynamic with Barry pre-cyborgification. The exasperated, mostly professional, only sane man who bristles at the continued stupidity of the artist formerly known as ISIS cast, and Archer in particular. The distinction is that Slater is now the one in charge, and since the show makes no bones about the fact that the CIA is an evil organization, Archer and the rest of the gang repeatedly botching the missions in increasingly spectacular fashion now takes on more of a inadvertently sticking it to the man bent. And maybe I just tactically chose to cover Archer as my latest retrospective because anytime I cover a show with Christian Slater in it, the video performs bizarrely well. Maybe the only reason my video on Kevin Conroy's Batman didn't take off on a rocket ship to the moon is because people don't know Slater voiced Deadshot in Justice League Action.
Christian, every time you're on a shoot, Christian, I give you your per diems for the whole shoot, and you lose it on the first day.
While I say the gang is working for the CIA, in practice, that's really just at the very beginning and very end of the run. Season 6 is a lot more about the personal problems and relationships of the characters, including a new one, Archer and Lana's child, Abigine. As I feared, the show doesn't really know what to do with a baby on its hands, and in the first half of the season, it's pretty much just a hot potato of dump babysitting duties on whatever character comes down with a bad case of had to give them something to do this episode.
Who gives a shit about a baby?
All the babysitting comes to a head in possibly the worst episode of the season, Sitting. Lana finally trusts Archer to watch the baby for the night, but asks him to call her if there's any trouble. Then she hires a man to shoot Archer and take Archer hostage just to test if he'll call her, even though her hired gun never really gives him the opportunity. It's an incongruously mean-spirited episode, where Lana basically just put Archer in a no-win scenario and is super smug about it. And I know Archer himself gets people shot or even killed all the time, but throughout the earlier seasons where he was at his worst, he would always get some sort of humiliating or violent karmic comeuppance by the end of the episode.
Drinking a gallon of Black Mexicans before driving around in a car with your infant daughter. Good point.
I was at gunpoint.
Also good.
Sitting marks the halfway point of the season, where Archer Season 6 hard pivots the overarching character relationships into the right direction, namely, getting Archer and Lana together as an actual couple. Doing a proper relationship not played strictly for laughs is actually a first for the series, and leads to some new avenues for comedy, moments of sincerity, and a pretty spicy sex scene to boot. Season 6 mostly thrives when it's doing the character-focused stuff. The episode where Archer first meets, or well, technically second meets, Lana's parents is so fun on a sitcom premise alone that I was kind of bummed out when I could tell the whole thing was going to turn into a spy caper. I was enjoying Archer trying to impress Lana's parents so much, then her father mentions he made a breakthrough on alternative fuel sources, and I was like, oh, okay, I see where this is going. Someone is going to try and steal it. Scratch that. It's an alternative fuel source. Slater and the CIA are going to try and steal it. Edie's wedding is another solid entry, even if it is a bit of a redux of Bloody Furlan just with Pam instead of Ray, and with a showdown with Barry in the third act. What momentarily feels like a final showdown. Barry is defeated with explosive ammunition, incinerated in a grain silo explosion, and has his destroyed metal endoskeleton hit by a police cruiser. And the final shot of the episode is his smoldering, lifeless metal body as the light in his robotic eyes slowly fades. The show really seems to be saying, this is the end of Barry, for real this time. But then at the last second, his eyes open again, he does a crazy laugh, see you next season. The moment is an even bigger fake-out because it's set to the dramatic Fargo FX series theme, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this is the big Fargo pseudo-crossover episode. You've got the theme from Fargo when Allison Tolman from Fargo guest stars as Pam's reprehensible sister. And later in the season, there would also be a crossover with FX's The Americans, with the special guest appearance of the male robot. The most widely praised, and deservedly so, character-focused episode is Vision Quest, aka the bottle episode where everyone gets stuck in the elevator. It is a bit of a shame Malory isn't part of the party, but watching all the characters lose their minds in a confined, simple situation that their own bizarre choices gradually complicates is very, very funny. And there's a nice number of callbacks to previous events of the series that informed who these characters are and elucidate why they're not exactly great in these types of situations.
I was lost at sea, Lana, and we had to ration the food and water. Well, we should have. I actually ate it, all while the other guy was asleep.
Why did you tell us that story?
If anything, that proves my point.
Despite how great it is throughout, I did find the ending of the elevator episode just completely baffling. I don't want to fixate on one joke, but I can't help it. I have to. It's torturing me. So at the end of the episode, the group is finally able to get past the rooftop signal jammer and call Malory for help. At which point Archer gets all nervous and the call redirects to the elevator phone instead. And it turns out this was all part of another one of his elaborate voicemail pranks. He wanted to get everyone stuck in the elevator, but didn't know about the signal jammer that would get them actually stuck since they couldn't call for help. So the whole ordeal was Archer's fault. Took me a minute, but I got it. Then, in the next scene, Malory gets everyone out of the elevator, and Lana accuses Malory of trapping them on purpose as a team-building exercise. And everyone in the elevator becomes suspicious of Malory. Even Archer, who knows he rigged the elevator. In fact, everyone knows he rigged the elevator, right? So why would anyone think Malory rigged it? I've seen people argue that Archer planned to trap Malory in the elevator, and that's why her phone redirects to the elevator phone when other people call, so she'll get the message when people call to see where she is. Which I guess could make sense, except why would Archer barge his way into the obviously still functioning elevator, knowing it's rigged to break down and knowing his mother hasn't been in it yet? I can't stand it. My brain can't stand it. Somebody please explain it to me.
And we boing into that giant spring at the bottom of the elevator shaft and then are safe.
So, Suicide Pact, an oldie but a goodie.
We've gone to space, we've gone to the bottom of the ocean, and for this year's two-parter finale, we're shrinking down and going on a journey through the human body. Because I guess Archer finales are just themed around places you go on Tomorrowland rides. Postscript here. Body Wars, the ride I was referring to, was actually in Epcot, not Tomorrowland. All those years watching Defunctland just for me to screw that up. Shout out to For Your Amusement, though. I was listening to their podcast, and one of them offhandedly mentioned Body Wars being in Epcot, and I was like, oh shit, I have to record a postscript! On a journey to save a genius CIA agent who pioneered the miniaturization technology by lasering a blood clot in his brain, the team is offered a massive payday should they succeed, and total blacklisting from the espionage world should they fail. All with a ticking clock that they only have an hour before their vessel returns to normal size, obliterating the scientists they're inside in the process.
When we go into that vein, we're gonna get hit with about 10 G's. Buckle up.
No. Just kidding. That's a lot of G's.
The first part is kind of plagued by just being littered with tangentially related pop culture references, but the finale really comes alive in part 2 thanks to the ticking clock. You kind of see it coming the whole time, but I did half expect them to pull the job off at the last minute because the consequences are just so dire. The climax of the episode where they fail the mission, blowing the ship up to normal size while still in the scientist's body and killing everyone in the room, is jaw-droppingly funny, and does lay the groundwork for the series stepping away from spycraft once again in the following season. And the finale also explores Archer's feelings of immortality, albeit pretty heavy-handedly, but either way, it's good groundwork for the upcoming Season 7's exploration of just how mortal Sterling Archer might be, and that's Season 6. The season may have relied on repeating episode premises a little too much for my liking, Conway Stern coming back for another inevitable betrayal, a character reuniting with a hick sibling they had a falling out with, Archer reuniting with a manipulative Katja who's playing him. Hell, we've even done Stuck in an Elevator before, although those two episodes aren't really comparable. Still, unlike Archer Vice, there weren't any major elements I outright hated. There's more and more intricately animated and impressive action sequences, and that catastrophic failure in the miniaturization lab is a hilariously gory punctuation mark to end the secret agent saga on. At least for the foreseeable future. We're off to the West Coast for Season 7.
When the word gets out that Sterling Archer, the world's greatest former secret agent, has his own frickin' detective agency...
Which, technically, you do not.
Again out of the spy trade, the cast decide to team up once again, this time putting their detective skills to the test instead of their cocaine-selling skills, all in the employ of one Cyril Figgis, owner of the Figgis Detective Agency. Again, the initial premise makes a big stink about how now Cyril will finally have something to do, and while he is almost immediately supplanted by Malory, who serves as the de facto leader of the group, he does grab just the tiniest bit more crumbs of screen time and B-plots, especially since every second counts for everyone, given Season 7's shorter runtime. Initially announced as a 13-episode season, which had long been Archer's standard, Season 7 was reduced to 10 episodes for reasons I haven't been able to definitively confirm, and the following seasons would all be truncated further to 8 episodes total. With the special exceptions of Season 10, Adam Reed's last season serving as writer, which would get 1 extra episode so he could send the show off, and the final season, which would have an additional 3-part finale. And to promo the shift to this new, sexy, California-based private eye genre, the ladies of Archer were included in an issue of Sports Illustrated's Swimsuit Edition. A fan of the channel actually sent in a copy they've had since 2016. And I was going to show it off on camera, but for some reason a bunch of the pages were stuck together. Diving right in, I mentioned Season 6 of Archer recycled a number of episode plot concepts, but I do feel Archer Season 7 is where I started to feel what I dubbed the Goldmember effect. I'm referring to Austin Powers' Goldmember, the 3rd film in the Austin Powers series, and the Goldmember effect has nothing to do with being a spy comedy series. That's just a coincidence. See, a few years ago, I was doing a rewatch of the Austin Powers series for the first time in like a decade. The first one is hilarious and the sequel is even better, introducing new characters and gags and concepts. And then when I got to the 3rd movie, Goldmember, my wife was like, "Oh, my friends have never seen an Austin Powers movie, let's all watch it together." They all loved it, and I enjoyed it, but couldn't help noticing that a handful of comedic bits were just the exact same bit again. And I couldn't help but think, I probably would have enjoyed this movie more if I hadn't seen any of the earlier entries and the entire package was fresh, which was what our friends experienced. All this to say, maybe Archer Season 7 lands better if you weren't like me and didn't rewatch the first few seasons to death during your freshman year of college. And yes, I am aware running gags exist. I understand callback and continuity gags exist, and often work, especially in Archer, which is very running gag heavy already. Hopefully you understand what I mean and I don't come across like I'm, splitting hairs.
Bulletproof.
But of course we're gonna make it bulletproof, right? Do you hear this? Just say bulletproof? You can't tell, can you?
Another reason Season 7 might work for newer viewers is an unfortunate byproduct of that delightful Season 6 scavenger hunt. Deservedly proud of his previous accomplishment, animator Mark Patterson implemented another scavenger hunt throughout this season, earning himself yet another Emmy. But while the scavenger hunt challenged viewers to comb through every little detail for hints and clues, the plot of the supposed private investigator thriller ultimately did not. The season opens in media res, with 2 detectives looking over the corpse of one Sterling Archer floating in the pool of aging movie starlet Veronica Dean. And throughout the season, in addition to solving the scavenger hunt, viewers were jumping at shadows about clues and hints and tricks about what's really going on with Archer's apparent demise and the various blackmail and hostage schemes surrounding Veronica Dean. But the problem is, at the end of the day, everything in the season's actual plot is exactly as it seems. The obvious hints that Veronica Dean killed her ex-husband aren't a double bluff. They are just tongue-in-cheek, obvious hints. Veronica Dean is land-rich, cash-poor, so anytime people are trying to steal from her, it's just her sleazy lawyer attempting to liquidate her assets. Who was that Veronica Dean doppelganger in the season premiere? Oh, just some scammer. She has nothing to do with the rest of the plot. All the characters surmised that the data disk they had was some Veronica Dean sex tape, but maybe it's more? No, it's a sex tape. Albeit a sex tape that Veronica Dean confirms in a throwaway line inadvertently implicated her in other crimes, which was also the MacGuffin in The Nice Guys, a private detective thriller that coincidentally released during Archer Season 7's run. It's a funny world we live in. Towards the end of the season, the show introduces that Krieger has robotic doubles for all the Figgis agency employees, sparking ludicrous amounts of fan speculation about characters not actually being themselves and so on that yeah, again, Archer's writers just had very little interest in actually exploring.
Let's see. What is love?
I didn't catch this season live, and went into it years later knowing people were pretty underwhelmed by the ending, so I wasn't particularly stung myself, but I can understand the frustration from people who speculated this mystery premise had some sort of grander trick up its sleeve when it ultimately didn't.
Archer!
I really don't want to come across as too critical of the season, since the detective mystery stuff is just like the spy stuff, primarily a framework, and getting upset at the lack of the plot's complexity doesn't feel completely fair, since at worst all I can criticize the show for is putting out an unintended invitation for viewers to chase their own tails. Season 7 has a lot of fun with farcical, mistaken identities, with the mid-season two-parter where the cast are taken hostage by a bunch of goons in clown masks being the centerpiece of the season. Multiple characters sneak off, take down a clown, then steal their disguise to blend in and plan their attack, unaware that several of their compatriots have also done the same, and escalating to the point where half the clowns are just the Archer cast unknowingly attempting to kill each other.
Holy shit, House. That must be Archer and a bad guy, but which is which? Should I shoot one? Wait, or both? Just blow off everybody's kneecaps and then apologize to one of them?
While the mistaken identity, comedic misunderstanding stuff works great for the one-off stories, it is unfortunately poison for the Lana-Archer romance, which is sad because those two coupling up really put a spark into the second half of the preceding season. The stupid episode where Katja came back just to kiss Archer and sow seeds of doubt in his relationship with Lana last year, but the whole he said, she said, overheard inopportune moments of conversation, they kissed me, I didn't kiss them, oh, but I saw you kissing them dynamic that pervades the latter half of season 7 is lame. That such an interesting pairing from the previous season would get broken up over this total drama fucking bullshit is just mind-blowing.
Do you hear that?
What?
That sound. I think it's the brake.
The what? What break?
The brake! That we're on!
And yes, at the end of the season, Archer is floating dead in a pool. With the rest of Figgis staff in custody, Archer boots up his robotic double for a final confrontation. The robot Archer will confront Veronica, get the confession, get her to shoot him, then the real Archer will apprehend her. Then the big twist at the end is, the real Archer got the confession and got her to shoot him.
Lana Kane.
For what it's worth, that is a hell of a twist, until you think about it for 2 seconds. Like, what was the plan here, damn guy? Why would you deliberately let yourself get shot to death? The series would pick up a massive 3-season renewal following this episode, but when it was written, the fate of the show was up in the air, and Adam Reed wrote it so it could function as both a cliffhanger, but also a potential finale. And viewing it as a potential finale, I can definitely imagine this ranking high on those worst series finales of all time rundowns, just for the baby-town frolics that lead to Archer's demise. As it stands, we can appreciate the majority of the episode for its charming comedic bits, and then just accept the ending as a contrived necessity because Reed wanted to reboot the premise again. But my very first theater teacher in high school told me to always end critiques on a high note, which I pathologically almost never do. So one final point of praise for the finale, I did chuckle at the scene where the two detectives investigating Archer's shooting, first seen in media res, have this back and forth where they're like, wait, why are we talking like we don't know who these characters are and what's been going on? We interrogated all of them like 12 hours ago.
So what, some movie star lives here?
Yes, Veronica Dean. Don't you remember? She's a person of interest in the other murder we're working.
Oh shit.
Wait, what are you... We were just questioning her 10 hours ago.
Alright folks, we're into the coma, but before we nod off to Dreamland, let's talk scavenger hunts. Archer Dreamland would digitize the scavenger hunt process with the release of the mobile augmented reality game Archer PI, which would allow viewers to tag various clues from the ongoing season on promotional billboards, on FX's website, and even in the Art of Archer hardback. It was a neat enough little tie-in, although given it was nowhere near as maniacally overcomplicated as the previous two scavenger hunts, Archer PI didn't generate the same online community, and it would be the final time the series integrated scavenger hunts into the background of a season. Or would it be? Maybe the greatest scavenger hunt of all happened in season 9 and it was so obscure that nobody found it. Until you. Stop taking your meds. Stop taking your meds and you can be the one to solve the case.
That was a clue.
Archer?
Yes, dum-dum. What show do you think you're watching?
I must be dreaming.
This is the apartment of your dreams?
So, Archer Dreamland. If I were a critic in the early days of YouTube critics, this is the point where I'd do a skit where I, pretend Archer was canceled after season 7, and then another YouTuber who I have a joke rivalry with would come in and shoot me, and then I'd fall into a coma, and then do thematically stylized reviews to match each coma season, but we don't have the budget for that. Alright, enough of the preliminaries. Come dream a little dream with me. 3 dreams, actually, with the trilogy of Archer Dreamland, Archer Danger Island, and Archer 1999. Unlike Archer Vice, which occasionally styles itself as a radical departure from the show's traditional style but was, in practice, mostly just more Archer, Dreamland is a radical shakeup that sees the entire cast in reimagined roles to fit the post-war noir detective genre. Malory and Len Trexler now run competing mob organizations instead of competing spy organizations. Although since Trexler is involved in human trafficking, Malory is definitely ultimately the lesser of the two evils. Trexler's right-hand man is Barry Dillon, aka Dutch, who will later be revealed as the true villain of the season, while Malory's sultry lounge singer Lana will later be revealed as an undercover IRS agent intent on busting everyone. It gives Lana some more fun material to work with, where she can be genuinely at odds with the rest of the cast from a law enforcement perspective instead of just a moral perspective, as she is the only character who isn't a criminal. Malory, less fun, again relegated to being the one who sends the main characters on missions, then sits back and waits for them to screw the missions up. She kind of slotted into that role in Archer Vice after having more varied interactions with the cast in preceding seasons. At this point, this has become the norm, disappointed as I may be by that. Ray is also effectively benched this season, tagging along with Archer in the season's 3rd episode, but otherwise sticking to the occasional background gag at Malory's club. Adam Reed was struggling with some health issues throughout the production of Archer Dreamland, so I can understand if essentially cutting Ray was born from his desire to not pull double duty as sole writer and main cast member voice acting. Meanwhile, Cheryl, or rather Charlotte for this round, is keeping her stock fairly steady. Wealthy heiress in a spat with her weirdo brother who holds the keys to their family fortune, who rattles off non sequiturs, gets excited over inappropriate things, and is more or less oblivious to what is really going on in each episode. Meanwhile, hallelujah, Cyril finally has something to do again, existing in Archer's fantasy world as a dirty cop on the take from Trexler. Even if he is the meekest of our trio of bad guys this season, he still gets moments of genuine cunning or sinister cruelty. His partner Pam is also on the take, although she does her best to secretly play the spoiler in Trexler and Figgis' more conniving schemes. Far and away the biggest winner of our side character stock watch is Krieger, whose star was already on the rise in the preceding 2 seasons, what with his actions throughout the season 6 finale being almost entirely to blame for the gang getting blacklisted from Spycraft, and with his robot double serving as the centerpiece for the final few episodes of season 7. In Dreamland, he gets an elaborate flashback episode that reveals he was a saboteur working against Nazi scientists. He creates the big bad of the season by giving Barry bionic limbs. He is the character that ultimately takes down the big bad in the finale, and like Pam, he's also playing both sides of the mob war. Although, unlike with Pam, the character's never really addressed that he's doing that, he just sort of is.
Because you know what happens to Snoops.
They get poops?
What?
And then there's Archer. Always able to stumble on success despite his foibles in the real world, in Dreamland, Archer is perpetually behind the 8 ball and at the mercy of others, a dynamic which certainly lends itself to the season's more grim and dangerous tone. Reed stated his intent to not allow the Coma Dream seasons to veer too far into, this story is all a psychoanalysis of Archer, instead using the dreams as a mechanism to make the genre-hopping stories happen. But I found there were a few moments where the Dreamland version of Archer almost seemed like a mouthpiece Reed was using to chastise his own writing, particularly at the conclusion of the penultimate episode where Archer has a meltdown about how what was supposed to be a simple detective mystery, again, turned into a bunch of nonsense with robots.
Who's there? Interrupting cow! Interrupting cow! Typical! Typical! I always do shit like this.
On the subject of tone, that is one of the sticking points for some audiences when it comes to Archer Dreamland. It's a much darker season than what would come before or after, not the least of which because the central mystery is Woodhouse's murder, with a subtext that the real-life actor who played Woodhouse had recently died. There's more visceral violence than what came before. Trexler's organization is doing sex trafficking, Cyril's making credible threats that he's going to kill people who cross him, and there is a very obviously concerted effort to take Barry from funny ha-ha crazy to actually scary villain crazy, with mixed results. His Hannibal-esque Last Supper murder tableau after turning on Trexler's gang is pretty gripping, but the second to last episode showdown with him is missing a lot of the Barry charm you get in other episodes and is mainly just him maniacally laughing. And the reveal that he's the killer who killed Woodhouse for no reason other than to see the lights go out of his eyes, I know a lot of contemporary reviews were like, damn, such a scary line. But I mean, really, I can't be the only one who thinks this. I want to see the lights go out has to be one of the most overused, I'm so evil lines of dialogue ever.
He didn't tell me to do it. Well, I did it just to see his light go out.
God damn.
Reed himself has speculated that this darker tone was possibly caused by his health issues at the time. He had major shoulder surgery early on in the season's production, meaning he would have to work on most of the scripts with one hand, which is exactly how I write some of my video scripts, just for different reasons. Implying I was masturbating while I wrote this. Reed also was prescribed painkillers at the time and half-jokingly mentioned the fear of becoming addicted to them in an interview with Variety, with him even admitting to using the character of Archer as an avatar when Archer starts popping pills in the final few episodes. However, I have a theory of my own that the darker tone was in part Archer's way of keeping up with the times. The big names in adult animation at the time were Archer, Rick and Morty, and BoJack Horseman, with both of the latter shows still relatively early in their runs but already delving into heavy themes and dark character examinations. I have a sneaking suspicion that some of the more twisted or self-reflective elements of Archer Dreamland were done in an effort to keep up with the cool kids, so to speak. All this discussion on tone to get us to the ultimate question. Is Archer Dreamland actually funny? And, kind of, but not really. Previous Archer was one of those shows that was getting quite literal laugh out louds from me, while Dreamland's gags were both more sparse given the more plot-focused nature of the season at large, while also being jokes that are more like you think in your head, yeah, that's pretty clever, but you don't really laugh. It's not really any big thing that affects the humor, just a whole lot of little things. Now set in a specified year well before the pop culture zeitgeist existed in its current form, Dreamland had to cut pop culture reference humor almost entirely. They really just have Casper the Friendly Ghost and that's it. Although Reed does indulge in several visual homages to the Terminator franchise when it comes to Barry. Part of it is just the tonal whiplash of Dreamland. I mentioned that Dreamland is darker than the other seasons, but is that tone consistent? No. Some of the episodes are played straight noir with quippy and humorous dialogue, but otherwise serious stakes, while others are a total farce. The finale is probably the worst offender, where the whole episode is wall-to-wall grim, but then there's a scene where the cast accidentally shoots Lana to death repeatedly, which is again, just total farce. And a much funnier bit if you can divorce it from the context of the episode it's in.
I'm sorry,
Poovey!
God damn it!
Drop the goddamn gun!
Okay!
I'm also of two minds about how the reduced episode order affected the comedy and the plot. When it comes to comedy, it means less screen time all around, and every character winds up having their one big running gag they each come back to the whole season. Pam rescued the Chinese sex slaves Len Trexler was smuggling, and she has increasingly delusional and amusing fantasies about all of them living with her and growing old with her like they're her children. Cyril's wife cheated on him with Archer, and characters can't help but mock him about it even when it has nothing to do with the topic at hand. Ray's band member will play rim shots that serve as the season's variant of phrasing, with Ray increasingly chastising him after the fact. And Lana's status as a treasury agent, or T-man, is repeatedly misinterpreted by the cast as her being trans.
Is that why your hands are so big?
I'm not a transvestite, you idiot! We had sex!
Ooh, yeah, but I wasn't down there.
Oh, I know.
These are mostly all funny bits, but it feels like there almost wasn't enough time for the comedy to breathe in just 8 episodes. But on the other side of the coin, there is not enough story for Dreamland to justify 8 episodes. And I honestly think this season may have been better off as a movie. I mean, if you watch all the episodes back to back and skip the credits, it only is a feature-length runtime, but a long feature-length runtime, approaching 3 hours. There is a pretty noticeable amount of filler in this season, especially in the third act. While Woodhouse's murder is the ostensible inciting incident, the actual plot is just a scramble for a bunch of ransom money after Charlotte kidnaps herself to get it from her brother. Charlotte wants the money so she can get away from her brother, Archer wants the money so he can get Malory's help solving the murder, Cyril wants the money so he can pay off his debt to Len Trexler, and Pam wants the money so she can keep it for herself and her adopted family of Chinese sex slaves. In episode 5, Cyril wins the scramble for the cash and takes off to Trexler's mansion. But then the next episode is literally just the entire cast driving to Trexler's house without any real sense of urgency. And the episode after that is just Barry chasing everyone through the mansion swinging a halberd around for 20 minutes. The final 3 episodes feel like they could easily be condensed into one finale episode without losing much in terms of comedy, while also gaining a lot in terms of momentum. And there's only one B-plot unrelated to the main story in the entire season. It's not a very good one, so it sticks out like a sore thumb. I mean, I know Archer mentions he hasn't slept in 4 days, but almost the entire plot of Dreamland takes place over the course of 1 day.
Better take one of these codeines. Although I'm not sure which is which, or what I've actually been taking. So, better take one of each.
The finale sees all parties converge at Malory's club, where Archer attempts to lay out the clues and solve the season's mystery, only for Barry to arrive and reveal he killed Woodhouse and did it for no reason. Krieger kills Barry, Lana is killed on accident, the ransom money turns out to have never existed, everyone walks away with their heads down, and that's the end of Dreamland. I know a lot of people had difficulty getting invested in Dreamland because they know it's all a fabrication that exists in a character's head. It's all fake. Why should I care? But longtime viewers of this channel will know that is not an issue I run into myself. I love a good alternate reality or fake reality or fantasy world, and as long as there is creativity and intrigue on display, I can get invested in the story and the characters despite knowing it's all fake. Which is why this ending is a pretty sour note for me. Instead of an exciting conclusion, Dreamland has this sort of nothing matters ending that practically mocks you if you did get invested. And to clarify, I do think there is a distinction between a dour detective ending, like, say, Chinatown, and Dreamland, which is like the villains openly admitting they didn't even have a motive ending. 2017 was a real rough time to watch FX original series if you're not a fan of the nothing happens, none of this matters ending. Fargo Season 3, Archer Dreamland, and The Americans Season 5. Jesus Christ. And for the record, since I now have all 3 of those finales on the record, the Fargo finale was the only one I felt executed the idea right.
She's dead! Because she got shot 7 times, and nobody could possibly survive that, not even in a parallel universe.
Speaking of dour endings, that's the dour ending to my thoughts on Archer Dreamland. When the season first aired, it received a generally positive critical reception, but an overall negative audience reception. Although in recent years, I've seen a lot of people appreciating the season more and more on a rewatch. I'll admit, as I was punching up my outline for the Dreamland discussion, that was how I felt too. Like, yeah, I can really appreciate what they were going for this year, but then, well, as you just heard, the more I punched up my script and analyzed the season in depth, the more it lost me all over again. After much internal deliberation, when all is said and done, I'm impressed by the dedication to the premise, but feel that the season as a whole is ultimately less than the sum of its parts. But if you're one of those viewers that Dreamland really clicked for, I'd be lying if I said I couldn't see why.
So, I guess I'll see you around.
Let's hop in our seaplane and take a voyage over to the second flavor of the Coma Dream Cornetto, Danger Island. Danger Island draws inspiration from the Indiana Jones franchise and naturally the classic adventure serials that inspired those films. Archer and Pam are business partners operating a seaplane charter business owned by Malory, and Lana is a Polynesian princess eager to see her home island freed from French occupation. So eager, in fact, that she's willing to make an alliance with the German government to be rid of them. You know, that German government. When word gets out that the Nazis are searching the island for a mysterious and valuable idol, the race is on for all parties to brave the dangers of the island's jungle and snatch up the idol first.
The princess and the crowd were talking about some kind of idol.
What kind of idol?
Some kind, I don't know. They didn't...
Like a native idol? So that's why that little German sneak is on the island.
To a greater degree than Archer Dreamland, Danger Island sees some of the Archer cast reimagined into more adventurous roles, fittingly for this adventure story. Ray and Cyril both affect accents. Ray is the local lawman of the island's French colony named Renaud, a fair-weather friend to our heroes taking more than a few cues from Captain Renaud. Right down to his name. Cyril, meanwhile, kind of steals the show with his radical reimagining, a Nazi spy posing as a businessman and leading the hunt for the idol. Only a tertiary antagonist in Dreamland, Cyril's dream persona Cyborg Fucks is actually the main antagonist of Danger Island, and between a few new running gags and an ever-deteriorating mental state thanks to his repeated defeats and increasing abuse of amphetamines, he's a fun play on your classic indie foe.
The jungle is very dangerous, full of lizards and snakes and cannibals and what else God weiß!
Can we shoot lizards and snakes?
Yes, of course!
Can we shoot the cannibals?
You can shoot anything you want!
The other wild shakeup is Krieger, now named Crackers and no longer a man. He is in fact a bird. A talking bird, well, I guess a lot of birds can talk. An intelligent, I don't mean like intelligent for birds, I mean like, my diction is failing me here. I guess sapient? Whatever, you know what I mean. Crackers is one of those written deliberately annoying characters, which is always a fine line to walk, but Reed and Yates walk it deftly, and Crackers wound up another highlight of the season.
Oh, yeah, you can fly.
Yeah.
So, you're out of here.
Is that weird?
I mean...
Well, yeah, obviously it's weird if you make it weird.
I generally found myself gravitating toward Danger Island more than Dreamland, even on a first viewing, likely in part because the season had a better sense of identity. I can certainly see why others would prefer Dreamland though, especially if you appreciate how Dreamland was going for more in terms of character development and tonal shifts, even if the execution wasn't all there. Danger Island, there's just a MacGuffin, not really any big mysteries. The cast are more or less all on the same team the whole time. The episodes are structured to be more episodic and less serialized in nature, and there aren't any allusions to Archer having a tragic backstory. Or, well, I guess there are technically, but it's not a literal tragic backstory, it's like a joke tragic backstory. And there's Nazis again, but they're not terrible atrocity Nazis, they're wacky cannon fodder Nazis. Danger Island did benefit from my ability to binge watch it, because I do feel even with its more episodic nature, there are some pacing issues. The treasure hunt doesn't even start until episode 5, with the first 4 episodes being everyone dicking around the starter town. The season really does come alive in the third act when we've got booby traps and Nazi mech suits and cannibal tribes to contend with, and there is just a bit too much setup stuff in town for my liking before we get to the fireworks factory, so to speak.
Why would those cannibals let us come all this way to find the damn thing if they knew it would kill us?
I really can't stress how much they hate white people.
Well then, they're not really our friends.
While I did find it to be a more enjoyable experience than Dreamland overall, Danger Island still just isn't all that laugh-a-minute funny. Some of the gags are just a bit too easy to see coming, and the moments that got a decent chuckle out of me were mostly when a gag would completely blindside me or perplex me and I'd chuckle out of bewilderment.
I might be immortal. I am immortal! Jesus Christ.
Still, none of those complaints are deal breakers, and if I had to point to something I really dislike about Danger Island, only one thing comes to mind. Almost every line out of Cheryl's mouth in the first 2 episodes is screaming. Constant screaming. Every line is screamt. I'm of two minds about the conclusion of Danger Island. The idol turns out to be made of uranium, and is therefore useless to all of the treasure hunters except for Cyril, who plans to use the radioactive material to further the Nazi war machine. Archer sacrifices himself to kill Cyril and destroy the irradiated idol, and Danger Island ends the exact second Archer hits the molten lava. Initially, I was pretty underwhelmed by this ending. Same as Archer Dreamland, it felt like a whole, the season is over, it was all just a dream anyways. If you cared, more fool you, asshole. But at least Archer Dreamland had a denouement for a couple of characters. Danger Island ends on one big Archer hits molten rock, fuck the season, it's over. It rubbed me the wrong way at first. As I said before, I can get invested in these little fantasy escapades featuring reinvented and reimagined versions of the characters, so the notion that none of it matters loses me. But the core concept Archer Danger Island is running with made this ending work for me in a way that Archer Dreamland didn't after I let it sit with me. Befitting a series that is influenced by the Indiana Jones franchise, the artifact everyone is hunting for is only valuable to the villain. They are defeated by their own lust for power, and the artifact is lost to the sands of time. Archer also has a character arc where he initially blames Pam's for all of his misfortunes as if she's some bad luck charm, then sacrifices himself to save Pam in the finale. So Archer makes a sacrifice play to save a character who has sacrificed her own interest to support him, in the process defeating a villain who has grander evil schemes of his own that needed to be stopped, as opposed to a maniac with no further motivations who just did everything for no reason.
I did it just to see his light go out.
I guess it's never the most likely suspect.
Actually, Mom, in 95% of cases, it is. The rest of the time, it's usually some deranged lunatic who did it for no reason.
That's Archer Danger Island. Through my critical, analytical, wasting my time overthinking this lens, I can see the concepts the finale wanted to play with. But at the same time, watching the villain and the MacGuffin every character has been fighting over plunge into a volcano only for the credits to roll 60 seconds later, I can also finally empathize with all those poor souls who got invested in Total Drama World Tour.
This close.
Space, the final coma frontier. Archer 1999 follows the voyages of the MV Seamus and her crew, divorced co-captains Archer and Lana, ace pilot with a death wish Cheryl, android science officer Krieger, public relations hulking alien bruiser Pam, and Cyril, bookkeeper for the holographic Malory running the operation. Malory's intangible form and ability to inhabit other robotic creatures give her a few more opportunities this season to get involved with the real fun of the adventures rather than sitting on the sidelines. Although again, not quite as much as I'd like, especially when upon waking from the coma there's a big moment where she points out that the core of the show has always been her and Sterling's relationship. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, it was.
It's really a love story.
Please, Mother, don't say that.
It's true.
Ugh.
Archer 1999 would be Adam Reed's final season writing for the series, and serves as a sort of transitory season as more and more credited writers are added to the lineup, with Reed really only credited with the first and last couple episodes of the season. If there were a noticeable quality difference between the Reed-credited episodes and the non-Reed-credited episodes, it might be a bit concerning, but in my opinion the best episode of 1999 is the Mr. Deadly episode, which is credited to newcomer Mark Ginneck, while the worst episode, the premiere, is penned by Reed. Frankly, it's been an issue with all of the Coma Dream seasons that they have super weak premieres that are rushed to get the premise out of the way, and Archer 1999 opening on an extended fart joke isn't exactly promising for the season to come.
Oh, you are disgusting.
Me? He's the one wallowing in... Oh, freeze-dried shepherd's pie.
Nevertheless, the season to come is not half bad. Despite its fantastical setting, 1999 is the Coma Dream season most adjacent to the original structure of the series. The entire cast are together again as a team, working against various bad guys and their own self-destructive tendencies to run and often fail missions, all with a once again cartoonishly evil, silly robotic Barry to do battle with. It's fun to see the Archer cast interact with a variety of sci-fi staple storylines, a fantastical drug causing all of the characters to lose their inhibitions, an In the Belly of the Beast Monstro-type episode, battling space pirates, battling in an alien gladiator arena, or helping an artificial being discover its humanity. While the episodes that explore the characters' psyches through supernatural sci-fi means are intriguing, again, this isn't the most laugh-out-loud season. The issue I ran into with 1999 was the humor's predictability, particularly when it comes to the whole serious moment undercut with joke routine. A woman making a heroic sacrifice to save the team after succumbing to space madness, tearfully giving her final words so Archer can share them with the world. Yeah, he's not recording any of this. Can't fool a fooler. Cheryl is worried that the magically magnetic box will suck at her fillings. I know. She's going to realize she doesn't have fillings at the end of the scene. Mr. Deadly, the sentient bomb, discovers his desire to live instead of fulfilling his designed purpose. And his change of heart gives him the power oh, he's gonna explode anyways, isn't he? The Simpsons writers developed a term called screw the audience jokes, which are essentially jokes where the setup is obvious enough that the audience will anticipate the punchline, and the humor is derived from deliberately not doing it. I feel Archer 1999 could have used a few more of those to keep us on our toes when it comes to humor, though they do get in one really solid one at the finale, where everyone is like, Cyril, don't do the suppressing fire thing, where you shout suppressing fire and then mag dump and hit nothing, and like obviously he's going to do the suppressing fire thing, but then he does, and it works.
God damn, dude.
Seriously.
You shot all my guys.
On the subject of sci-fi means of exploring the characters' psyches, despite Reed's earlier claims, 1999 is the Coma season most interested in exploring the real-world Archer's psychology. One of the more intriguing episodes involves the crew finding the corpses of their doubles, initially believed to be a multiverse situation but later revealed to have been clones manufactured without their consent. The central gag of the episode is that the alternate universe Archer was a kind-hearted man, beloved by his crew and still married to Lana, while our Archer is bitter and self-absorbed. It's a neat idea in concept, but the episode lays that concept on ludicrously thick. Hardly surprising if you do your homework on Archer's credited writers. Throughout the show's run up to this point, if you're watching an episode with an overwrought analysis of Archer's faults and a laser focus on how he is a taker in one of his relationships, Mike Arnold is probably the credited writer. Archer and Lana on the fake honeymoon, Archer and Lana dog-sitting, Archer and Lana having a relationship spat in Wales, Archer and Pam having it out while trapped in quicksand together. All Mike Arnold joints. And now we've got the mean Archer brushing off the fact that he had a nice clone episode, hinting that he recognizes his toxic influence on others out in the real Earth that was.
Please know my only regret is
the hair, obviously.
I wasn't able to save my valiant crew.
Earth That Was continues to bleed into Archer 1999, and after hallucinating versions of the real-world members of the cast, Archer is mistaken by the crew for going space mad and put on trial for attempted mutiny. The trial is interrupted when Barry crashes the party, intent on killing Archer, all while the dream world continues to break down. It's a neat throwback to the knockout climaxes of the early seasons, the Archer cast turning on Archer only for everyone to rally together again when a superpowered Barry shows up for a showdown. There's an even greater degree of import both on-screen and behind the scenes. On-screen, the dream is collapsing, and Archer's awakening is imminent.
So you're willing to die just to make sure I do?
Yep.
Why?
Because, Archer, a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, you put your nasty dick in my fiancé's butthole.
Behind the scenes, this was the final episode with Adam Reed as part of the writing staff, and with the declining viewership of the series and the series creator's departure, it was up in the air if there would ever be another season of Archer. Archer only got renewed for an 11th season a few weeks before 1999's finale, so 1999's finale was produced with Reed believing this might not just be the end of his tenure at the series, but the end of the series as a whole. Hence the season finale being an absolute blowout. Big showdown with the big bad, big send-off twist to classic running gags, a sentimental musical montage of memorable moments throughout the show's 10 seasons, and a big, big boom before Archer wakes up.
Shit, I had something for...
The episodic nature of 1999 means I don't have the issues I had with Dreamland and Danger Island of the show just sort of deliberately collapsing in on itself at the end. Since there isn't any sort of serialized plot, the writers are throwing out the window. And I guess that's a wrap on 1999, and Adam Reed's time writing for the show, and the Coma Dream seasons in particular. Archer would be renewed for another season, with a new writer's room and Reed staying on to voice Ray, though I do appreciate 1999's pseudo-series finale. I've discussed it before in my videos on Chuck and Community. I actually really like season finales that function as a series finale because the shows in question assume they're not getting renewed, even if the following season premieres after a miraculous renewal have to do a fair bit of backtracking to get us back to the status quo. And as to how the Dream seasons stack up against each other, there doesn't seem to be much online consensus, beyond specific individual forums seemingly gravitating toward specific seasons. In my personal opinion, I feel like each Coma Dream season was slightly better than the last, with the caveat that each season premiere was noticeably worse than the last. Though in the eyes of the show's creator, the Coma Dream seasons were some of Reed's favorites. Archer wakes up, but 3 years have gone by. And as we enter season 11, the question is, how much has the show changed? Both in-universe and out.
When did you get your shit together?
Oh, I don't know. I guess it was probably around coma o'clock.
What?
That's just an inside joke we had. About your coma? I guess you had to be there, and not in a coma.
Boy do I love me a good time skip. Whether that time skip is just for the audience or involves a character Rip Van Winkling alongside us. The unfettered promise of everything and everyone we know being altered by the passage of time in what was, to us, the blink of an eye. the nervous excitement of being a stranger in a strange land. And Archer capitalizes on that fun with its deft Season 11 premiere. Not so fresh out of a 3-year coma, Archer attempts to return to the super spy lifestyle that defined his identity, only to realize that his shooting left him with physical conditions that render him unfit for duty. Worse still, Archer's co-workers have moved on in his absence, and seem to be much better off without him. Malory has rehabilitated the agency's image, professionalism, and profitability. Cyril has achieved peak physical conditioning, and is now recognized as the world's most capable spy. Cheryl has put her maniac ways behind her, and Lana quickly married philanthropic billionaire Robert after Archer fell into his coma. The cast aren't shy about admitting that their lives have all been much better without Archer, although Pam and Krieger admit they missed the guy and the chaos he would enable, which I considered a sweet touch since they were the main trio back on Danger Island.
Well, now you both have a lifelong relationship with a Kane.
Oh, right. Lana Kane. Okay, that's pretty solid.
Well, look who stopped being such a bitch.
While it makes for a fun, if intermittently tragic, season debut, the post-coma season does revert the characters to their former, more degenerate selves a bit too quickly for my liking, as well as falling into a new episodic structure. Each week, Archer will discover some new thing he dislikes about the post-coma world, throw a tantrum about it for the duration of the episode while screwing up a mission in the process, and at the end of the episode, one of the characters will come around to being just as petty and screwed up as Archer, either because Archer's ceaseless drinking and blasé negligence enables them to share his lax attitude, or because Archer is deliberately trying to sabotage their lives. Archer learns Lana has a husband now, so he goes on a double date with them and drives a wedge between them. Archer learns that Cyril is the new team leader while he himself is relegated to being an office drone, so he crashes a mission, undermines Cyril's confidence, and deliberately goads him into binge eating so he'll lose his physique. Archer learns that Barry has turned over a new leaf and is now working for the agency, and even though their shared contempt for Cyril causes the two to form a fast friendship, he still manages to somewhat resurface the villainous other Barry persona by the episode's conclusion.
Barry doesn't hold a grudge, but other Barry, well.
Now here's the boring part where I complain about moral values. Or I guess, the boring part where I accuse Archer of following the Rick and Morty leader again. Despite the show's return to breezy, consequence-free spycraft, there's a weirdly nihilistic bent to the entirety of Season 11, with the major emotional through-line being that none of these characters were actually capable of self-improvement. They all just want to be assholes and roll around in the dirt with Archer at the end of the day, all while using Archer as a convenient scapegoat so they can avoid accountability. And I mean, that's not just my interpretation of what the season is trying to say. They literally spell it out for the audience in the finale.
Did you people ever consider that you need me around because you want the excuse to be your worst selves?
That whole all of the characters are pieces of shit, and the main character is the biggest piece of shit of them all, but he's also morally superior because at least he admits he's a piece of shit, was a popular emotional through-line in comedy and dramedy shows throughout the 2010s, and it's one that I genuinely never find myself enjoying or emotionally connecting to, so I wasn't feeling it when Archer shifted from winding up humiliated or in the back of a cop car or wrapped around the hood of a car as payback for his jerk-ass actions throughout the episode, to now being righteously vindicated by another character's emotional breakdown instead.
I hate him! I hate his stupid face! And his stupid car! And his stupid coma cane! And his stupid... doesn't give me the respect I deserve!
I also don't find myself connecting to the dynamic because some of the characters don't seem like they do want to regress to pre-coma Neverland, or rather, we're simply told that they do, but it's incredibly forced. Lana presents her marriage with Robert as a real romance despite his age, born from shared attraction and not because she's just after his money. But then in the double date episode, they act like a fledgling couple that hardly know each other, instead of a couple who have been married for over 2 years. Whoops, guess Archer was right, it is a sham marriage. And Cyril quickly devolves into his meek former self, and there are token interjected moments in the season and the following season where Cyril admits that he actually prefers office work and being a wimp-ass loser over being the world's most capable spy. Are you sure that's really what you want, Cyril? And not just a consequence of Archer giving you the Ramsay Bolton Reek treatment all season? I've never seen any compelling justifications from the defenders of this plot development for, 1, why reverting Cyril to his old status quo is a good creative decision, since nobody seems to know what to do with him once he's in that role, and 2, how this character progression is organic. People who like the direction the post-coma season went with Cyril always seem to default to some rah-rah main character worship of Archer. Cyril was a beta, challenging the throne of the Alpha, but when Archer came back it was was clear, Archer has always been the true alpha male. Yeah, I'm getting real. You have to have a very high IQ to understand Rick and Morty vibes from that subset of the fandom. And to be fair, you have to have a very high T to understand Archer Season 11. The humor is extremely Sigma. And without a solid grasp of Manosphere jargon, alright, I'm done with this bit.
You've done to make me feel this.
And then there's the relationship dynamic that really hasn't been explored at all. Archer's relationship with his daughter AJ. This isn't the first time on this channel I've covered a sitcom that introduced a baby, tried to do baby B plots but realized they had no interest in them, and then did a time skip so they could at least work with a toddler who can, talk. And I know Lana has deliberately kept AJ from Archer as much as possible, but they don't even mention her until episode 3, and she's at boarding school. And then in the penultimate episode, she just gets kidnapped to serve as off-screen rampage fuel for the main cast.
Cat and mouse, predator and prey.
Or not that.
I think you got her.
Not to come down brutally on Season 11 across the board, as I mentioned before, I really like the premiere. There's a fun running gag that Krieger builds Archer a cane to help him stay combat ready despite his injuries, the tactile cane. That's loaded with gadgets Archer constantly wastes, showing them off, and then doesn't have loaded when he actually needs them, as a parody of James Bond Q gadget plant and payoffs. The Adam Reedless writing team captured the voices of the cast relatively well, with the notable exceptions of Cyril and Lana, who are flanderized to be their most wimpy and most naggy selves, respectively, in order to engineer their predestined downfalls. The episodes where Archer stops whining and starts having fun with a new buddy are far and away the most endearing. While the Barry team-up episode isn't the best episode featuring our bionic bud, it is a fresh dynamic to explore. And the episode where Archer finally finds a valet worthy of replacing Woodhouse is silly fun as well. Like I mentioned while discussing Season 6, they're relationship-focused episodes where I almost wish we didn't need to have an obligatory spy showdown at the end.
So your valet is trying to kill you.
Well, right now, he's trying to kill you.
What?
But after I shoot you, he'll try to kill me. Keep up, Cyril.
Continuing on my list of positives is the season finale. Structured as a locked room mystery in Antarctica that rapidly escalates to have world-threatening stakes, it is a refreshing change of pace from the Archer mission-spoiling bitch fits that have defined most of the season leading up to it. The episode also alludes to Archer's experiences from within the coma in a few charming ways, with one of the snowmobile henchmen appearing to Archer as a halberd-toting Dreamland Barry, a penguin giving Archer a hallucinatory pep talk as Crackers from Danger Island, and the entire cast briefly flashing back to the 1999 personas in a callback to how they all reverted to their real personas in the finale of 1999. The nods to the lessons Archer learned while in the coma dreams are such a nice touch that I retroactively wish they had been a bigger part of the first post-coma season as a whole. While a decidedly mean-spirited run of episodes, I did find Season 11 could be fun when it decided to actually have a bit of fun. And you are rewarded with a satisfying final taste in your mouth after enduring earlier rough stuff. And no, we're not doing phrasing.
And how many times did you guys save the world while I was in a coma? I'll take your silence to mean 0 times!
Perhaps the most notable thing about Archer's 12th season is that it would be the final season to feature Jessica Walter as Malory Archer, as Walter would pass away during the production of the season. Before the season aired, some media outlets claimed that Walter had completed her voice work for the season before her death, a claim that becomes evidently not true as the season goes along. I don't envy the bind the writers were put in, but for the most part they navigate Walter's unexpected death fairly well, via some repurposed audio from preceding seasons, mostly just keeping Malory in the background of later episodes, hootering around the latest exotic location, mumbling about finding a bar. It's noticeable if you know to look for it, but otherwise pretty seamless. The only scene where the repurposed audio is distractingly bad is a scene where she and Robert do one of those Malory doesn't know how to use the tech bits, which, yeah, in a show known for rapid-fire banter and fantastic cast chemistry, a guest actor riffing with a half-dozen repurposed lines of dialogue is going to stick out like a sore thumb. Odd decision.
Sterling, it's me.
Sorry, Malory. We have a similar system at my company. I think you're on mute.
Turn it up. Sterling? Sterling?
Still, they really do bring things home in the finale. Malory is given a few quick action sequences where she gets to save the day, which don't require much in the way of dialogue other than heat-of-the-action quips. Sterling reads her farewell letter as she retires from the spy life for good, and there's a final scene of her and good old Ron Cadillac reunited on a beach somewhere, just as Walter was now hopefully reunited with her late husband Ron Liebman somewhere. That send-off had me tearing up.
And how is my lady love?
Infinitely better now.
Season 12 isn't short on sentimental moments. The writers seem a little self-conscious of how mean-spirited they made the preceding season, and in addition to holding Archer accountable for his treatment of Ceryl last season, and giving Ceryl the hand-wavy "I actually like being an accountant more than the spy" angle, there are proportionately more episodes that feature happy endings or characters getting closure on events from their past. Maybe to the point of overcorrection. The big flashback episode to Archer's first mission where his mentor dies, played by Bruce Campbell in a cameo I am amazed it took them this long to get around to, does the whole prequelitis thing where all of Archer's defining character traits came to be because of the events of this one mission. It's played a bit tongue-in-cheek, but I do wish they had gone even harder, to the point of full parody, which only the episode's ending flirts with.
Reiko is the one who started calling me Archer, so I think from now on, you should call me Sterling.
Really?
No, forget it. Bad idea. I have a lot invested in that name. I mean, just from a branding perspective alone.
Now down a member of the cast, Season 12 made a concerted effort to expand the show's supporting roster, primarily with characters who were briefly introduced last season but are now featured more predominantly. Unfortunately, all of the new additions are pretty tired comedic archetypes, and most of them are of the deliberately annoying variety. Lana's husband Robert is now financing the agency, with Lana bristling at having him involved in her work life after seemingly already being fed up with him in her personal life. He's your stock, condescending rich guy who thinks he's enlightened and is obsessed with, quote, making the world a better place. Lana's college friend-turned-rival now serves as the team's United Nations ambassador. She plays the finger-wagging environmentalist type. And to aid in showcasing the agency's more eco-friendly espionage efforts are two overly bubbly millennial types working in marketing.
Your entire process is outdated dirt.
But dirt with potential.
A nutrient-rich loam.
Is there life on Mars?
Definitely.
Ugh. We're also introduced to Fabian, leader of a new rival spy agency, IIA. Fabian has a lot of traits. He's a more capable spy than the main characters, he has a mild speech impediment, he seems to fancy his run-ins with Archer as tests of Archer's competence, and his corporate oversight is ruthlessly fastidious. But those traits never seem to cohere into a real fleshed-out character. He's kinda just sorta evil spy guy, sorta evil corporate guy, and even when it's revealed toward the end of the season that he has a grand evil plan to invent a source of clean energy and then force oil companies to pay him to not sell it, it's all just kinda generic corporate bad guy stuff.
Holy shit! Oh my god! Oh, you guys are in so much trouble. Let me introduce you to Barry the Death Cyborg, who actually is my friend now. Right, Barry?
Sorry, pal. It's actually other Barry.
With Walter's death, Archer's future was once again in doubt, with news of a 13th season renewal announced only a week before the finale aired. So once again, we have a maybe possibly this might be the series finale ending. So we better put a neat bow on everything, which, for what it's worth, does once again make for a satisfying conclusion. Of course, most important of all is the touching Malory send-off, but there's so much more. Archer squares off against the evil other Barry persona, and good Barry does a factory reset to defeat his sinister alter ego in a heroic sacrifice. Archer's body has finally fully recovered from his coma, and he is able to defeat Fabian without the use of the tactile cane. Lana catches Robert cheating on her after a bout of infidelity on her part as well, and leaves him so she can be consoled by Archer. And Robert sells the agency to IIA, with the agency closing its doors and Archer being forced out of his company-owned apartment. A slight which causes Archer to destroy the clean energy machine schematics in retaliation.
There's one thing you fail to understand, Fabian. And when I reveal it, you will realize that you've been taken for a fool.
And what's that, Archer?
Again, a not too sweet but not too nasty, not series finale to send off the season. And that's season 12. It's tough to say goodbye to Jessica Walter, given her fantastic contributions to this show and many others over the years, made even tougher by the supporting characters called in to fill the void, ranging from flat to downright insufferable. And one of those new characters will be sticking around, with Fabian's voice actor Kayvan Novak being promoted to a main cast member in the coming season. Season 13 will show what it's like to have the agency gang under IIA's thumb, and how they intend to get out of it.
Oh, what are we gonna do about that guy?
Complaining that nothing?
Despite season 12 ending with Archer seemingly kicked out of his home, he's right back in it at the start of season 13. Now in the employ of Fabian. Fuck it. When he introduces himself in the first episode, he says his name is Fabian, then everyone just calls him Fabian all the time and now I look like a dick. The gang does assorted insert spy stuff here missions for Fabian, and it isn't too long before he inevitably betrays them with another cartoonish and relatively pointless evil scheme, becoming dictator of a foreign nation and framing the agency for the coup.
An entire country at your disposal. Every appetite fulfilled.
My appetites will never be fulfilled, Fabian, because I am ultimately empty, is, I guess, what I'm arguing.
Fabian's plan is really just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the big theme of Season 13. Lazy writing. From joke construction to character arcs to just episode concepts in general, everything feels lazy. There's an episode where the cast babysits a more grown-up AJ. So of course we're going to do the AJ is a precocious child who is already a master spy just like her mom bit, because that's the most obvious thing to do. With Malory gone, there's a question of who the new group leader will be. So of course all the characters bicker about how they should be the ones in charge, Ceryl and Ray get put in charge and screw it up, and then at the end of the season, Lana gets put in charge because she's the only competent one. Because that's the most obvious thing to do. And it even ends the whole season on an obvious fourth wall joke where like, here's Lana's line that would cue the credits, but it didn't, and we're all still standing here awkwardly. Hardy har har. Characters are reduced to their most basic traits, with the most emblematic example probably being Archer's love of adorable animals. It was kind of a nice detail that fleshed out his character. That he's so selfish and rude to people who mildly inconvenience him, but he also has this childlike glee when it comes to adorable and exotic animals. It gave the character new comedic angles to work with his ease of interacting with animals while struggling to interact with people also being an element informing other characters' suspicions that he may be on the autism spectrum in Coyote Lovely. But now it's like, one of the Archer gags is he loves cute animals, so he needs to geek out over cute animals every episode. There's an episode where Archer repeatedly references that he's always going to choose the path of least resistance, and that definitely seems to be the mindset the writers took to Unlucky Year 13.
Getting in this truck the hardest way possible, Lana, then taking charge and getting Pam back, because I care.
There are seeds of some clever ideas mixed into the season, but they have a tendency to go off in odd directions. Lana and Robert are getting divorced, and Robert wants to fight for custody of AJ, which ultimately boils down to Lana just going, oh my god, this mission is so crazy. I hope nobody finds out I did this crazy mission in family court. And it ends on this really weird note where Robert reveals he only fought for custody to give AJ a chance to choose Lana and prove to Lana that she really is a good mother, which like, is that cope that he lost? It's not played like it, but it sounds like cope to me, guy. Pam strikes up a relationship with a sexy Swiss agent, and all it amounts to is typical sitcom are we an official couple hemming and hawing. And the show makes motions like it's going to explore how Archer reacts to working without his mother around. But the writer's answer to the question of who Archer is without his mother is he's just even more Archer. Yeah. Path of least resistance. There's an episode with a really intriguing hook that Archer has begun to go to therapy, but that angle rapidly devolves into a typical spy caper, where Fabian is trying to kill the therapist for not being vetted, and Archer and the therapist are trying to bang each other.
You can bring things into the world instead of taking them out.
Or we can live in Norway and give boat tours on the fjords.
No, just the Rhine Bakery, because that is the best one.
Fabian's master plan is, again, pretty pointless. I mean, the guy is already like the king of his own corporate world, so his grand evil scheme being taking over a country for kicks is pretty Saturday morning cartoon villain, but I'd be lying if I said putting the gang on the lam for the final few episodes didn't put some spark back in the series. The bank heist has some solid gags, and the return of Slater as the spoiler who was trying to do a CIA coup on top of Fabian's coup makes for some refreshingly hostile bickering.
You've got so many rodents in the CIA that the C probably stands for Chuck E. Cheese.
Why are you thinking about Chuck E. Cheese? Because you want to go there with a kid that you got tricked into having who no longer sees you as her father?
And with that, we're on to the 14th and final season of Archer. Have no fears, we've got stories for years. Like, Barry becomes a refrigerator. Another character gets addicted to cocaine. No, seriously though. The writers had a big-ish plans for the series moving forward. With Lana in the captain's chair, a new main cast member was introduced to serve as Archer's foil in the field, former Interpol agent Zara Khan. Zara's reputation definitely preceded her for me from online discussions I'd seen while researching the show. Reputation preceded in a bad way. She's very infamously a teacher's pet of the writing team, a more capable super spy than all of the bunch combined, who frequently one-ups and emasculates Archer, to the point that her dissection of his toxic masculinity literally makes him impotent in one episode, all while espousing palatable ideology about eating the rich. As if Malory working for evil corporations and sinister government entities for a quick buck wasn't, the joke.
It's just how the world works.
But does it have to?
No, not have to, but...
Pays you to? And gives you New York private school perks?
Huh.
You took this job for personal benefit, but chose to ignore an obvious morality issue. You let an unhinged rich idiot come along and gave her the power to tell us what to do.
While I don't think Zara ever adds much to the cast, I think the hate for the character is primarily born from her first few appearances. Forgive the, 11th Simpsons reference in this video, but she's introduced as a Poochie character. Anytime she gets a good zinger in, a character has to comment on how good the zinger was. Anytime she saves someone from danger, a character has to mention how awesome and capable she is. But once she's just a part of the cast and not a focus, she's not the blight on the season I've seen her depicted as. And even in those early episodes, there are a few moments where Archer's blunt rebuttals to her wordy and condescending digs are still funny.
I feel like loose cannon is never used as a positive.
Really? Because people call me one all the time.
And you think that's a compliment?
Obviously.
And now we know you're not the subtext canon.
Said the stupid canon.
Zara's digs at Archer's advancing age also set up one of the better late-season Archer episodes. The one where they infiltrate a plastic surgery recovery spa catered to crime lords so they can disguise their faces. Very Marbella-esque. Nobody's gonna get that reference. Maybe some people. The right people. Archer's fears about the toll his age and spy life have taken on him, paired with Krieger's horrific experimental plastic surgery relationship with the head surgeon that leads to a Slither-esque monster the show barely even acknowledges, all with some classic rapid-fire Archer jokes, it's a respectable late-game entry.
You know, bud, maybe this is the mission where you learn not to rely so much on luck.
Are you kidding? This was my luckiest mission yet.
He got shot like a dozen times.
Yeah, in a hospital.
Sadly for the creative team, those big-ish plans for Zara would not come to be. Initially envisioned as a character with a 3-season arc, Archer would be cancelled after the season she arrived in, though the show would get a 3-parter episode to wrap up with, now packaged as a single, feature-length episode on most streaming services, titled Archer Into the Cold. Into the Cold is a largely satisfying conclusion to the series. It doesn't exactly put its best foot forward, with the first act being about the team going on a boilerplate mission so that they won't get blacklisted from spycraft, which obviously we've already seen, and which they already failed, and did get blacklisted, and yet here we are. But when the real villainous scheme unfolds, the finale comes alive.
Big evil supervillain plan, got it. So, what are you gonna do? Blow up Pluto? Poison all the money in the world? Some kind of giant mystery thing that turns out to be an anticlimactic real estate scam?
A rogue Slater and a returning cyborg Katja have teamed up to reignite the Cold War via a false flag. Katja fantasizes about peace through mutually assured destruction, while Slater plans to profit as an information broker. Archer is also tempted by Katja's offer to join them in their scheme. Not only can the two be together again, but in a Cold War world, Archer will no longer be at risk of blacklisting, and will have eternal job security as a secret agent. Series finales tempting the main character with the possibility of staying in the past forever instead of moving on is nothing new. But Archer puts a fun, global nuclear war doomsday clock spin on it. Despite himself, Archer allies with the agency to stop the plot, and Krieger uploads Barry's consciousness in the refrigerator to a new body, so they'll have a ringer to face down the unstoppable Katja. And the surprise climactic revelation that Krieger only had time to make a tiny robot body, I was fucking cracking up when I saw that. It is really satisfying that a show that has made me laugh hysterically many, many times over the course of more than a decade managed to elicit one last unstoppable laugh from me.
Barry? What happened to you?
Well, first I turned evil, then I killed you, then you were my girlfriend, then I died, then there was a bunch of me, then I got split into good and evil, and then I was a refrigerator and killed evil me, and now I'm gonna kick your ass, I think.
Slater betrays Katja, duels to the death with Archer, and offers to tell Archer who his father is when he's about to die, an offer which the now much more self-content Archer refuses.
Slater? Turns out I don't need to know.
Oh, that is such horseshit!
But hey, enjoy falling.
Katja uploads Tiny Barry's consciousness into her body for them to share, and then Katja, Barry, and Archer have an erectily confusing 3 consciousnesses, 2 bodies threesome. The agency is blacklisted and shut down, but 3 months later it is revealed that Archer is still working off the grid. MI6 taps Lana to hunt him down, only to reveal that she already knows where he is, and the two agree to play cat and mouse, spy hunting spy for happily ever after, with Archer recruiting Pam as his partner in crime as the credits roll. Into the Cold is a fittingly fun send-off to Archer, with a handful of sentimental moments as well as a number of impactful callbacks. Callbacks to a lot of things from the early seasons, including a few guest characters and plot threads that haven't appeared since the pre-Vice era. If you're someone who never finished the series, which is understandable, as Archer as a whole has more than a couple off-ramp moments, it's worth checking out. The only thing that might leave you bewildered if you haven't kept up is that Barry is a fridge. The Barry fridge episode wasn't great, but for how funny it makes the punctuation of the rant about everything that happened to him over the course of the series, I think that alone justifies the episode's existence. Archer was a show of many eras, and while I recognize I came down like a hydraulic press on some of the later seasons, it was never a show that put out a frustratingly bad season. Maybe bits of season 13. Coming from a single writing voice for much of its run possibly put undue pressure on Adam Reed, since some of those early seasons aren't just funny, they're downright hilarious at times. A hard bar to clear year after year. So that's Archer, and if you work for the CIA, I'm sorry I occasionally poked fun at you and your organization during this video. I'm actually very proud of you, and all the good work you've done.
For the love of all that's green, take me and Robert to the lettuce store.